Well, I hate to break this to you, but money isn't actually made of paper, which also proves that money doesn't actually grow on trees. Most banknotes are 25% linen and 75% cotton, which is why they have such a distinct look and feel. Back in the 19th century, money was made of parchment paper. That's why people could very easily counterfeit it, unlike now. The Eiffel Tower is almost 6 inches taller during the summer. When you heat up some substance, its particles start to move more actively and take up a bigger volume. That's something they call thermal expansion. When the temperature lowers, the substance contracts again. Such an effect is more prominent in gases, but you can also track it in liquids and solids, including iron. Because of this, people build large structures like bridges using expansion joints. They allow a structure some leeway to expand and contract, and such changes don't cause any damage. Wow, I have some pants like that. Now, honey can last for thousands of years without going bad. Bees land on flowers to collect sugary nectar. Then they transport it back to their hive and transfer it to other worker bees. These bees reduce the water content of the nectar by repeatedly drinking and regurgitating the liquid. Bee barf. Special enzymes in their stomachs break down the glucose in the nectar, and it becomes more acidic. Bees deposit this nectar in the honeycomb and start fanning it with their wings so that the water evaporates more quickly. The honey is now highly acidic and low in water content, which keeps it safe from spoiling. The bacteria that can cause the rest of the food to go off can't survive in such conditions. Now, a long time ago, people didn't elevate their mattresses off the floor. This practice started in ancient Egypt and continued in many other cultures. People realized it was cold on the floor, and they could warm their beds easier if they were off the ground. Houses used to be more drafty. Cold air came in from under the doors. There was no central heating, so people had to find other ways to stay warm. Warm air tends to rise, and if you're positioned higher, you won't be as cold as on the floor. Also, this way, people could keep their beds clean more easily. In simple homes, floors used to be way dirtier than today, and all that dirt usually migrated into beds. Continuing now to talk dirty, do you think people are naturally clean and tidy? After all, our ancestors, who lived thousands of years ago, already used latrines and were tidying their hair with combs, and they kept their homes and themselves clean. Our natural need for hygiene and cleanliness is driven by our sense of disgust. That's the very mechanism that helps our bodies stay safe and protects them from different infections. That's why we're more sensitive to certain smells and things. But we still have some pretty sloppy habits. For example, eating snacks over a keyboard. Ew! I certainly never do that. But there are animals that are even neater than us humans. For example, rattlesnakes like to keep their surroundings tidy. Some of them even use their muscular necks and triangular heads to sweep aside messy grass when they hunt. Many animals like to clear their path when going after their future meal. Reptiles too. Less vegetation increases their chances of catching food. Songbirds also prefer to keep it neat and get rid of uneaten food, eggshells, and other trash in their nests. This way, they also make their homes less visible to their enemies. Meanwhile, out in space, shadows are darker on the moon than on our planet. That's because the atmosphere on Earth scatters more sunlight. But if you could visit the moon, you'd observe shadows so dark you wouldn't be able to see where you were going. Also, you'd notice fresh footprints on the lunar surface. People haven't set foot there in a few decades, but the footprints look as if they were left just yesterday. Since there's no water or wind on the moon, nothing can erase these footprints. So they stay there in their original form for millions of years. So be careful where you step, huh? Earth's core contains enough gold to coat the entire planet. And if you decided to do this, the level of this precious metal would be knee-high. For thousands of years, people have been mining gold and platinum, together with a bunch of other precious metals, from underneath our planet's surface. That's why we have depleted some of the minerals in certain areas. But Earth still has a huge number of such deposits, especially if you get closer to its core. That's because of countless meteorites that collided with our planet during the period of its formation. Those meteorites contain different minerals, including gold. Back then, Earth was still in its molten state, which is why most of the gold, a heavy element, sank deep into its core. And the silicate mantle, positioned over the core, trapped really huge amounts of gold and some other minerals. Unfortunately, most of them are kind of out of reach now, since we talk about 1,800 miles below the surface and temperatures of thousands of degrees. Too hot, in other words. Sure, if you were about to go into space, one of the first things you'd think of would be your spacesuit. But do you know that it's possible to survive in space even if you aren't wearing any protection? Well, don't get your hopes up yet. You'd last for no more than 15 seconds. That's how long it would take you to lose consciousness, because oxygen will stop coming to your brain. In 1965, one technician accidentally depressurized his suit inside a vacuum chamber. He lost consciousness after 12 to 15 seconds. 27 seconds later, his suit luckily got repressurized. The man later said that he remembered the moisture on his tongue started to boil. He also lost his sense of taste, and it didn't come back until 4 days after the accident. Now, you can't hold your breath in space either, so that won't save you. Your lungs will rupture at one point because the air inside will expand. The oxygen in other parts of your body will start to expand too, which means you will balloon up to twice your regular size, almost like Dudley Dursley's Aunt Marge from Harry Potter. Well, not quite. You won't explode, only thanks to your elastic skin. It will keep holding you together, and the liquids in your body will start vaporizing pretty quickly too. Doesn't that sound pleasant? No! The ocean has its iconic blue color thanks to sunlight. When the sun shines, the water absorbs longer orange and red wavelengths of light and reflects shorter blue light waves. This is only possible when there's a huge amount of water. So, the more water you have in one place, the bluer it becomes. That's why the water you pour in your glass has nothing in common with this beautiful ocean blue color. The ocean performs many important functions. For one thing, it produces 50 to 80% of all the oxygen on our planet, which means it keeps us alive. But it also helps the internet to function. So, when you're laughing at a funny dog video or binge-watching your favorite series, yup, thank the ocean for that. The majority of the cables that power the internet, and therefore allow people from all over the world to use it, run underwater. Those are submarine communications cables, miles and miles of wiring crisscrossing the ocean floor. There are special boats for putting all that in place. They're designed specifically for that purpose. To make sure nothing damages the cables and your internet, people need to put them on relatively flat stretches of the ocean floor. The cables also need to be away from old shipwrecks or large ocean ecosystems. Some of these cables have a special coating that protects them from damage. This way, no hungry sharks or curious fish have a chance to munch on the wiring. Now, trees talk. Well, not exactly like people do, but they have their own way of communication. Their roots are connected through an underground network of fungi. That network got its name of the Wood Wide Web. Thanks to this network, trees can share resources with one another. That's how they talk. They use these fungi to transmit nutrients and water from one tree to another. For example, there's a mother tree or another tree that's stronger and older than others in the forest. So it shares some of its nutrients and sugars with small trees growing nearby. Thanks, Mom! Now look at all these insects flying around on a nice sunny day. Do you think they get sunburned? Well, those that spend most of their time in the open don't. They have dark exoskeletons that contain melanin. That's how they block UV rays. But insects that live underground and in the water, or nocturnal creatures, have paler and thinner skin. If they spend too much time outside during the day, they can indeed get sunburned, or even worse, they could get eaten.
You ever wondered why potato chips have those yummy, crunchy waves? Imagine you're with friends watching a film and you're eating chips. Would you prefer to dip non-ruffled chips or a ruffled one? Non-ruffled ones cannot handle the weight of the sauce and break down. Bam! You have sauce all over your white t-shirt. So, ruffled chips win. Ruffled chips also give you a better mouthfeel. Potato chips have a prominent oil taste, which decreases the potato taste. And you might have fingers oil-covered. Where's the fun in that? So, what do you prefer, ridges or regular potato chips? Barcodes made our lives so much easier. But do you know how they work? Zebra lines are the keys here. Barcodes are read using a scanner. The scanner has a laser that detects the pattern. The laser reads the barcode. The barcode absorbs some light and the rest is reflected. The computer can make sense of those dots, lines, and numbers on a barcode. Imagine black and white lines as zeros and ones. Black observes the light and white reflects it. This rule applies here. Black parts of the ones and white parts that reflect the lights are zeros. The scanner sees the white sections, not the black parts. Post-its are our friendly reminders to visit the dentist or a scheduled meeting. Be sure to hang them on the wall firmly. We've been using Post-it notes wrong this whole time. You're not supposed to peel it off from the bottom because this creates a crease in the paper. The note won't hold on to the surface for long. Take it off from the side. It'll stick more powerfully. Cloud-like and sweet. The one and only cotton candy. It's irresistible, especially for young people. Too much sugar is bad for the teeth. Everyone's heard this phrase from their dentist. Surprise, the inventor of cotton candy is a dentist. So, cotton candy was invented in 1895 by John C. Wharton, a candy maker, and William Morrison, a dentist. They named their product Fairy Floss. It's a cool name, by the way. They sold thousands of cotton candy at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904. Cotton candy is still with us, showing up in amusement parks, and dentists still care for people with tooth decay. Some things never change. Do you love a lollipop? Why are there tiny holes in it? Those two holes in a lollipop stick may be used as a simple whistle. But they're there to hold the candy in place. The stick is dipped in the liquid syrup. It flows into the holes, solidifies, and surrounds the stick. A life-changing invention is a refrigerator, but not everybody knows it has a dark story behind its door. The Refrigerator Safety Act was launched in August 1956 to prevent young people from being trapped inside a household refrigerator. The refrigerators used to have an external latch that would shut the refrigerator door when it was not in use. It can only be opened from the outside. You can relax. After this regulation, household refrigerators were manufactured to be opened from the inside. Moving on from the kitchen to the bathroom. Using the toilet while scrolling down the Instagram feed is taken for granted. Guess what? More people in the world have phones than toilets. According to a UN report, billions of people lack access to a toilet, especially areas in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. The number of mobile phone owners outnumber those with proper plumbing and sanitized toilets. Also, scientists have found that cell phones carry 10 times more bacteria than most toilet seats. So yeah, you might want to sanitize your phone after watching this video. Do you use FaceTime or Skype to talk to each other worldwide? It could be for a chat, a meeting, or something else. The webcam technology was born with a very reasonable goal though. In 1993, researchers at the Computer Science Department at the University of Cambridge set up a system to see if the coffee pot was empty or not. Yes, you heard it right. Researchers needed coffee to fuel their brains, as many of us do. They get up from their chairs, go to the coffee pot, and find it empty. Instead of making sure that someone makes a fresh coffee, they wired up a system. The system would stream the images of the room where the coffee pot was kept. At that time, it was 3 pictures taken per minute. It's more than enough to see if the pot has coffee in it or not. Thanks to the researchers for not getting up from their chairs. And for another tiny thing, coming up with this brilliant idea. Do you buy white eggs or brown eggs? What's the difference besides the color? Since brown eggs tend to cost you more, you might think that something in them makes the prices a bit higher. Nope. The color of the eggshell doesn't affect its nutrition or quality. Both eggs are healthy. Brown eggs cost more because the hens that lay them need more feed. It's more pricey to raise them than the white egg hens. The cost is reflected onto the consumer. There is a hole at the handle of some kitchen pots and pans. We mostly use this hole to place the kitchen utensil vertically on a cabinet door. They have a secondary use. Imagine you're cooking multiple dishes to make a feast for the family. The kitchen counter is full of stuff. You have a hard time finding a place for the gravy sauce spoon. You can place the spoon in the hole on the edge of the saucepan handle. It will stay there safely until you decide to stir the sauce again. Not every spoon fits into the hole. It might easily slide to the floor. Better to have a test run where the spoon is clean. Imagine you have a takeaway of noodles with an extra topping on your way home. You recently moved and all the plates are in the boxes. You struggle with this noodle box. The toppings are stuck at the bottom. The sauce didn't mix evenly either. We've missed out on an easier way to eat from the takeout boxes. They can be flat and serve as plates. You take the edges of the paper out and open it up. There you go. Now you have a plate. The best part is you don't have to clean it up afterwards. Did you know that a tomato is not a veggie, but a fruit? So is an avocado. Watermelon is actually a berry. There's more to that. Peanuts are not in the nuts family. They're different from almonds and cashews. Peanuts grow pods under the soil. They're harvested like potatoes. Their upper parts are like bushes. These tasty ciders are not classified as nuts since they grow under the ground, not on a tree. They get pulled up from the soil like carrots. Next time you eat peanuts in a friend circle, you can mention this new fact you heard. Or it can be an icebreaker when you see someone eating peanuts. Classifying food as fruit or a vegetable is a tricky business. Do you know who invented t-shirts? In 1904, the Cooper Underwear Company prepared an ad and introduced its new product with before and after photos. It was referred to as an undershirt. The slogan was, "No safety pins, no buttons, no needle, no thread." As the name revealed, they were worn under the clothes. One day, it was announced that sailors should wear undershirts with no buttons under their uniforms. T-shirt love spread like pollen at a park on a spring day. Soon, thousands of men started wearing them. Though t-shirts go back to the 19th century, now we have all adjusted to the comfort of our cozy t-shirts. Do you also wear t-shirts like the sailors?
The Mozilla Firefox logo is a fox embracing the planet. The original browser's logo was a phoenix bird reborn from its flames, designed in 2002. Back then, the browser was named Mozilla Firebird. 2 years later, they changed the name to Firefox. It's the English nickname for the red panda. It's a rare and protected animal from Asia. There's a bear standing on its hind legs hidden within the famous Toblerone logo. The mountain-shaped chocolate bar was created in Bern, the Swiss capital, by Emil Baumann and Theodor Tobler. It's nicknamed the City of Bears. It has a bear featured on its coat of arms. That's why this animal is featured in the image of the Matterhorn mountain that inspired the logo. The image of a happy girl in Wendy's logo was inspired by the daughter of the fast food chain's creator, Dave Thomas. Wendy is her nickname. If you look closer, you'll notice her collar spells out the word Mom. Whether intentional or not, it became something to mean a homely feel the restaurant gives its guests. 9:41, set as the time in iPhone's ads, isn't a random choice of numbers. In 2007, Steve Jobs first introduced the iPhone to the public after a 41-minute presentation at exactly 9:41 a.m. The first Apple logo was designed in 1976 and featured Sir Isaac Newton sitting under a tree, with an apple about to fall on his head. It seemed too complex and unclear to many, so Steve Jobs wanted it replaced. The designer of the new logo, Rob Yanoff, made it an apple we all know today. He was most likely inspired by the original logo, but wanted to make it more simple. He added the bite so that no one would confuse it with a cherry, a peach, or any other round fruit with a stem. Without realizing it, he added a fun pun to the logo. Bite seems very much like the computer term. Toyota's logo symbolizes the merge of the hearts of customers and the company. Two overlapping ovals stand for T for Toyota and the steering wheel. The outer oval is for the world-embracing Toyota. The background space represents the infinite values of the company. Great quality, value beyond expectation, the joy of driving, innovation and integrity and safety, the environment and social responsibility. Life insurance for Apollo 11 astronauts cost a fortune since the mission was so risky and unpredictable. The astronauts couldn't afford it, so they signed hundreds of covers that their families could sell to fund some big expenses in case anything went wrong. Snickers candy bar was created by Frank Mars, founder of Mars Inc. It was inspired by an already existing snack made of nougat, peanut, and caramel, and named after Mars's family horse. Until 1990, they called it a marathon candy bar in the UK. As soon as they switched the name to Snickers there, it went from the #1 selling candy bar in Britain to the #3. When NBC's logo was developed, color televisions were revolutionary gadgets. The logo with a rainbow of colors points it out. The peacock illustrates the phrase, "as proud as a peacock." It was meant to show they were proud of their new color system. The 6 different colors of the feathers represent the 6 different divisions of NBC. The yellow arrow in the Amazon logo that starts at A and ends at Z shows you can buy anything from them, from A to Z. It also looks like a smile, symbolizing the happiness of their customers. The original name of the business was not Amazon, but Cadabra Inc. Jeff Bezos experimented with different names for his website as well, and one of them, Relentless.com, still redirects to Amazon. Papa John's Pizza CEO, John Schnatter, started his business in a broom closet in a bar he co-owned with his dad in Indiana in 1984. Over the years, it has grown to the 3rd largest pizza chain in the world, with 5,500 restaurants in 49 countries. Baskin-Robbins has 31 different flavors, and the letters B and R in the logo hide this number. The B curve stands for 3, and the stem of the R stands for 1. You can visit the first website ever created, called the World Wide Web Project, even today. It went live in 1991 and now serves as a historical archive about the World Wide Web. It doesn't have a single picture, just text. The web itself was invented by Tim Berners-Lee, a British scientist working at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, in 1989. The first product ever scanned at a supermarket was a 10-pack of Wrigley Juicy Fruit Gum in 1974 in Troy, Ohio. The barcode was invented and patented back in 1952, but the idea only took off when its inventor started working for IBM. Until then, grocery clerks had to put a price sticker on every item, and cashiers had to read those tags and type the price by hand. The Quicksilver logo is a customized version of the Great Wave off Kanagawa, a famous wood print by Japanese artist Hokusai. When Quicksilver expanded their business and started a woman's brand Roxy, they mirrored their logo so that one looks like a heart. Until 2010, rural broadband internet was slower than carrier pigeons. In a speed test, they let pigeons with USB sticks fly from a Yorkshire farm to cover the distance of 50 miles. They finished the race an hour and a quarter later. By this time, only 24% of a 300 megabyte file had been uploaded. Picasa lets you organize and view your images online, and its logo is more than a simple colorful camera shutter. The white space in the middle forms a house, meaning it will be a safe home for your photos. It also has a house or casa in its name, and P stands for pixels. Letters L and G in the LG logo form a human face. L is the nose, and G represents the rest of it. They call it the face of the future. And the idea was to give the brand some human element and make it friendlier. Many tech companies test their new products in New Zealand. It's an ethnically diverse country with English-speaking people, and most importantly, it's so isolated, news about product failure won't spread quickly. FedEx logo might seem basic when it comes to its colors and font, but it's hiding an arrow between the letters E and X. It stands for speed, accuracy, striving for perfection, and perseverance in achieving goals. The 4 rings in the Audi logo represent the 4 companies that blended together to form it: Audi, DKW, Porsche, and Wanderer. The latter started as a bicycle repair shop. Gillette Company, famous for its razors, wanted their logo to be as sharp and precise as possible. This is how they ended up with a cut between G and I that forms blade-like shapes on top of each other. Black and white colors in the logo symbolize the elegance, purity, prestige, and excellence of the products. Some people have a fear of technology, aka technophobia. Now, it mostly has to do with complex new devices like computers, but it has its roots back in the time of the Industrial Revolution. It began in the 18th century when workers were afraid new machines would take their jobs. Google rents goats from a special company in California to mow their lawns. They bring about 200 goats to Google headquarters at Mountain View. It takes them around 1 week to eat all the unnecessary grass and fertilize the land. The founders of Domino's were originally planning to add a dot to the Domino's in the logo for every new place they opened. But it was growing way too fast and too big for that, so they decided to keep just 3 dots for the 3 original locations. In 2004, @ became the first new character to be added to Morse code for the first time in at least 60 years. It consists of the signals for A and C with no break in between, so you can spell your email in Morse code now if you ever have to. In its 150-year history, Levi's had 8 logo redesigns. The first one was called the 2-Horse brand. It had a lot of detail in it. The current logo, known as Batwing, is over 50 years old and represents the shape of a pocket you can find on every pair of Levi's jeans. It's supposed to give a youthful yet timeless feel. Evernote app stores your notes and has an elephant for its logo because the saying goes, an elephant never forgets. And these animals do have an impressive memory. The ear on the elephant is curled over, like a post-it note. The H in the Hyundai logo isn't just for the company's name. It's the outlines of 2 people firmly shaking hands. It's an exchange of trust between the company and its customers. The oval around the figures is a symbol of Hyundai's global expansion. The silver color symbolizes sophistication and perfection. The digital blue version reflects reliability and excellence. Lacoste got its iconic logo thanks to a bet René Lacoste, co-founder of the company and tennis player, made with the captain of the French Davis Cup team. The captain promised to give Lacoste a crocodile skin suitcase if he won the match. Lacoste didn't win, but got his nickname Crocodile out of it. He had a crocodile embroidered on his tennis court blazer. When it was time to launch his apparel brand, the crocodile came in handy. Oreos are the world's most popular manufactured cookie, with over 40 billion pieces produced every year. Originally, they were sold by weight at the price of $2.35 for 9¼ pounds. A circle topped with a 2-bar cross stamped on each cookie is a Nabisco logo that is a European symbol of quality. When Michael Dell started his company in 1984, he planned to turn the world on its ear with his business. That's why the E in Dell's logo is slanted. The blue color stands for loyalty, trustworthiness, confidence, and intelligence. The first mechanical alarm clock could only ring at one time, at 4 a.m. It was invented by Levi Hutchins in 1787 in Concord, New Hampshire. Hutchins designed the device to wake him up for work. The early prototype of alarm clocks was invented by the Greeks in 250 BCE. They used rising water to bring a whistle into action. Airbnb's logo isn't a bent paperclip. It's called a bellow for belonging. It's a person's head, the location symbol, a pin, and a heart for love. Together, these symbols make Airbnb's famous A. In 2006, Qatar Telecom organized a charity auction where they sold the phone number 666-6666 to an anonymous bidder for $2.75 million. It became the most expensive phone number in the world. Segway Polo is a legit sport with functional teams from all corners of the globe. It doesn't require a particular fitness level, has no age restrictions, and is gaining popularity. There are 4 8-minute sections of the game, and the goal is to knock the ball into the goal using a special hammer. If you take a closer look at the Tour de France logo, you'll notice a cyclist hiding in the O, U, and R. The second hidden message here is the yellow circle, representing the stages of the race that only occur during the daytime. Phantom vibration syndrome is how you call that feeling when you think your phone is vibrating, but it isn't. If you often experience that, it might be a sign you're over-involved with your phone. Sony Vaio logo symbolizes the integration of analog and digital technologies in its products. The letters V and A look like an analog wave, The letters I and O are there to resemble the numbers 1 and 0 for a digital signal or binary code. The original Xbox had edited sound bites from actual transmissions from the Apollo space missions. If you left it on the home screen, you'd eventually hear fragments of real chatter from the mission. Pinterest lets you pin stuff you find interesting to your online boards. Its logo shows exactly that. It's a pin design hidden in the letter P. Pin-shaped Ps are an important part of Pinterest branding, to get people to pin more things by mimicking the action of pushing a pin into a board. Pepsi spent around $1 million to design its logo with many secret meanings. It hints at Feng Shui, the Renaissance, the Earth's magnetic field, the theory of relativity, Mona Lisa, and the Parthenon, among other things, and is supposed to serve as the key to the universe. Nintendo was founded back in 1889, long before computers, as a playing card company. They still produce those in Japan and even organize a bridge tournament called the Nintendo Cup. In 1973, a Motorola engineer made the first cell phone call in history from 6th Avenue in New York City. He was using a 2.5-pound prototype to call a rival from Bell Laboratories. There was silence at the other end of the line. The phone was almost the size of a shoebox, allowed its owner to talk for 35 hours, and needed 10 hours to recharge. The first commercial text message in history was sent on December 3, 1992, and was wishing happy holidays to the recipient, who was a Vodafone employee. Now the average number of texts sent is 6 billion per day. Apple used to have its clothing line in 1986, called the Apple Collection. They did it 1 year after Steve Jobs' temporary resignation. The idea was to see how far their fans would go in buying branded clothing, accessories, and lifestyle items. The horizontal lines in the IBM logo remind those times when photocopies had difficulties reproducing large blocks of solid ink. Originally, there were 13 lines in the logo, but then they reduced the number to 8 as they had ink bleeding problems with the 13 lines in their print media. The serif on the bottom of the M has an equal sign to show they value equality. 5 megabytes of data used to weigh 1 ton. In 1953, engineers in IBM's laboratory invented the first hard drive. The cabinet containing it weighed over 2,200 pounds and could hold just 5 megabytes of data. McDonald's logo isn't just a letter M, but also the symbol of the original golden arches of the restaurant chain. They realized prospective customers could see them well from the highway and would stop by. The world's first computer mouse was invented in 1964 and called XY position indicator for display systems. It was rectangular and made from wood with a little button on the top right. The inventor, Doug Engelbart, called it a mouse because of the cord coming from it that looked like that of a mouse. The name Mitsubishi is a combination of Mitsu, which means 3, and Hishi, which means water chestnut. The Japanese use this word to denote a diamond shape, so, put together, the brand name translates as 3 diamonds. The shield shape of the NFL logo symbolizes the league's commitment to the highest standard of sporting entertainment. The 8 stars stand for the 8 divisions currently used in the NFL. The first word that has ever been auto-corrected was te. To do it, you had to press the left arrow and F3. Northwest Airlines logo has an N and a W in negative spaces. The triangle in the circle is a compass that points northwest. The airlines were flying up high from 1926 until 2010 when they merged with Delta. A study from Beth Israel Medical Center in New York showed that surgeons who grew up playing video games more than 3 hours per week make 37% fewer errors, perform 27% faster, and scored 42% better at the test of surgical skills. The Mercedes-Benz brand is a product of merging the companies of Gottlieb Daimler and Carl Benz. Benz company's logo that was Benz lettering, surrounded by a laurel wreath, was registered as a trademark in 1909. Daimler had a Mercedes star for a logo. When the companies merged in 1925, they got a new shared logo of Daimler's Mercedes star in Benz's laurel wreath. The star has 3 points that represent land, sea, and air. These are the 3 environments the company originally planned to dominate. Carrefour translates into English as crossroads and has a logical logo of 2 stylized arrows, symbolizing the different directions you can take. The logo is in the French national colors of red, blue, and white. In the white space between the arrows forms the letter C. Salvador Dali designed the Chupa Chups Lollipops logo. The artist put the existing text on a colored daisy-shaped background. He also wanted to move the logo to the top of the lollipop wrapper from the side, so that it would always be intact and visible to buyers. The first ever computer virus was developed in 1971. It was named the Creeper Program and designed as a security test to see how it would spread between computers. Samsung was founded as a grocery store on March 1, 1938, which makes it 38 years and 1 month older than Apple, founded on April 1, 1976. The first phone was released to the public back in 1874. It took 3 years for it to be in the homes of around 50,000 people, and another 75 years to get to the 50 million people point. It only took the radio 38 years to get to the same number, and television made it in just 13 years. The Google logo seems pretty basic when it comes to colors. There's primary red, yellow, and blue. But they also added green that interrupts the primary color scheme. It's supposed to show that Google is an innovator that doesn't do what's expected of it and is unique from other companies. Shell Oil Giant has been around since 1904, and its yellow-red logo has changed a lot over the years. The original one was a more realistic picture of a pecten shell. The current logo is more stylized.
Now, with selfies taking over the social media world, phone companies had to adapt to the way people hold their phones and use their cameras. Apparently, most users tilt their heads slightly to the right when taking selfies. With the camera located in the left corner, it makes it easier to make sure the camera will be in line with the usual tilt of selfie takers. Ooh, genius. This allows for a more natural look, making the image look better to leave you feeling great. Cameras on the back of most phones are on the left side as well. Sorry, left-handers, this was designed for the more common right-hander. Mount Everest might be getting all the attention, but Mauna Kea in Hawaii is technically the tallest mountain in the world. Measuring over 33,000 feet from base to summit, the only thing holding Mauna Kea back from the title is that it's mostly underwater. Australia is wider than the Moon. The Moon has a diameter of over 2,100 miles, while Australia's diameter from coast to coast is almost 2,500 miles. While it may be wider, the Moon wins with the land area, over 15 million square miles. Whew, that's huge. And all that cheese. Antididophobia is the fear that at any point, somewhere in the world, a duck or goose may be watching you. The person isn't necessarily afraid that the duck or goose will get too close to them or even touch them. They just don't like the feeling of being watched. It was first described in a comic strip to show how anyone can be afraid of anything. Anything can be a phobia. A duck just watching my every move would certainly give me the heebie-jeebies. I might just quack up. Crows are pretty good at recognizing people's faces and have even been found to remember people for a long time. This could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how nice you are to them. You don't want to come across a crow that's holding a grudge against you. You probably can't tell which crow is which very easily, so it might be better to play it safe and just give them all a little wave. In the city of Yoro in Central America, they have an annual event known as the Rain of Fish. Not that the locals get a choice for it anyways. Every year in May or June, a torrential rainstorm rolls through town, leaving a mass of fish flopping around in the streets. The phenomenon is believed to be caused by waterspouts or water tornadoes, which drop the fish far from home. Seafood delivery for free? Yes, please. A photon, the most basic part of light, takes thousands, maybe millions of years to travel from the sun's core to its surface. But it only takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds on average to get to your eye once it's at the surface. That means that the sunlight we see is very ancient, older than the human race itself. There are only 4 words in the English language which end in "dos." Tremendous, horrendous, stupendous, and hazardous. Sounds like the teacher's comment on my report card. A single strand of spaghetti onto your fork has a name. It's called a spaghetto. In the Italian language, an I at the end of the word means that it's plural, while an O is singular. This goes for all types, like gnocco instead of gnocchi, fettuccino instead of fettuccine, and raviolo for a single parcel of goodness. Accidentally eating one of those fruit stickers on apples, peaches, and pears shouldn't worry you at all. They can be eaten, but they aren't exactly edible. It'll just leave your body as everything else does. The glue used for them is regulated by the FDA, but it's still recommended that you wash the fruit and remove the sticker before chomping down on it. Dolphins not only have names for each other, but they'll call out for their friends specifically. Makes you wonder what names dolphins have for us when we get in the water. Hey, look, Frank, those hairless monkeys are back in the water again. German chocolate cake is one of the most delicious cakes out there. It's my all-time favorite, but its name has nothing to do with the country at all. Named after an American baker called Samuel German, who made the tasty treat in 1852. The Eiffel Tower can be 6 inches taller during the summer because of thermal expansion. When the iron heats up during really hot days, the iron particles expand, taking up even more space. 2 planets in our solar system rotate the opposite way as the others. Venus and Uranus have this backward rotation. Venus also has the longest day of any planet in our solar system, completing a rotation every 243 Earth days. A baby puffin has the adorable name of Puffling. To feed its chick, the puffin parent will carry about 10 fish in its beak at a time. While you sleep, you can't smell anything, even really bad or potent smells. Our taste and smell senses are cut down by 50 to 20% during flights. This is why airplane food always tastes like cardboard or too salty. Sounds like a pretty convenient excuse from the airlines to me. Look at any watch advertisements, and the time on display should be 10:10. This is because of the positive effect it has. It looks like a smile, and usually the brand name of the watch is directly below the 12. Stewardesses is the longest word that is typed with only the left side of the keyboard. The word itself isn't used much anymore. Most people say flight attendant instead. Those dum-dums who call out, "Hey, you!" are normally invited to exit the aircraft mid-flight. The longest English word is a crazy 189,819 letters long. I won't spell it out here, but it's the full name for the large protein nicknamed Titan. To say this out loud would take over 3 hours. So grab a snack and settle back, because we're going to be here for a while. Nah, I wouldn't do that to you. Eunoia, at 6 letters long, is the shortest word in the English language that contains all 5 main vowels. Eunoia means beautiful thinking or well mind. It's rarely used these days in the medical field. And if you add 2 of them, you'd then have a para-eunoia. Nah, not really. Glass balls can bounce higher than rubber ones. When a rubber ball hits a surface, it deforms before returning to its original shape. And a lot of energy is lost in this process. A glass ball doesn't compress at all, keeping a lot of its energy for the bounce back up. Here's a flash. Kangaroos can't walk backward. Their long feet and heavy tail make walking impossible, forward or backward. They can move side to side with incredible agility, but jumping back is impossible because of that large muscular tail. So let's go to the hop. The loneliest creature on Earth is a whale that's been calling for a mate for a long time. Researchers identified the whale's abnormally high call decades ago, and is believed to have never received a response. The unknown whale is called lonely because it communicates at a frequency not used by any other whale in the Pacific Ocean. How sad. Meanwhile, the lyrebird can mimic almost any sound it hears, including chainsaws. The Australian species not only copy other birds, but other animals too, like koalas and dogs. In captivity, they'll also copy artificial sounds, such as car alarms, trucks, and chainsaws. The Northern Hemisphere holds roughly 90% of the world's population. No wonder the streets are so crowded up here. The cougar goes by more names than any other animal. The cougar has been given over 80 names, The puma, mountain lion, panther, and catamount are all the same thing. Just don't confuse them with bobcats, lynxes, jaguars, or leopards. They don't appreciate that. Most people can't lick their own elbow. The length of your arm, combined with the flexibility of your joints, makes this impossible for many. Your elbow is just far enough down on your arm that you can't reach it. Go ahead, try it. I'll wait. Okay, time's up. Octopuses and squids have beaks like birds. The beak is made of the same material that our fingernails are made of, keratin. They can also fit through anything that their beak can, making them the ultimate escape artist. Not you, Houdini. There are over 31 million seconds in a year. We recently discovered this tiny chameleon in Madagascar. At less than an inch long, it's the size of a seed and could fit easily on the tip of your finger. It's nicknamed the nano lizard and shows how many tiny creatures could be hiding out undiscovered, away from the eyes of scientists and researchers. 11 plus 2 equals 13, of course, and 12 plus 1 equals 13. The 13 letters that make up these phrases equal each other in more ways than one. They are actually anagrams of each other. Wow. Anagrams, homonyms, and antidophobia. That's a mouthful, but not as sweet as my German chocolate cake. Hey, I'll take seconds.
Why is the myth dogs are colorblind so widely accepted? They do see colors, even though they have a more limited spectrum than we do. They see blue, yellow, and violet pretty well, but it's hard for them to tell the difference between orange, red, and green. So, if you want to redecorate your dog's house, maybe you should stick to purple and blue shades. Animals, plants, and humans, we're all actually connected and have common traits because we've all evolved from the same micro-ancestor. This would be our planet's original ancestor, LUCA. This stands for the last universal common ancestor, which is a 3.8 billion-year-old organism. Closing the eyes can improve your memory. Let's say you want to listen to a story and see how much you can remember. Studies show that if you close your eyes and take a 15-minute rest, you'll remember it better. A good technique for when you're studying or trying to remember some boring information. The pink corner of your eye is actually the remnant of the third eyelid. We all have this mysterious membrane. The third eyelid is way more prominent in certain mammals and birds since it protects their eyes from dust. But for humans, this tissue doesn't have any particular meaning, so scientists believe we'll eventually lose it. When potatoes are exposed to too much light, they mostly turn green, whether they're in a factory, storage, or a field. This happens because they start to form chlorophyll, a pigment that gives plants green color. So when you see green potato chips, it means they were made from one of these potatoes that were exposed to light for a longer time. But just because some green potato chips made it into the bag doesn't mean you should eat them. As it turns out, the green areas on potatoes and on chips are not good for you. Nothing's going to happen if you eat one or two of these green potato chips. But if you eat too much of a green potato, you might experience some discomfort. Despite their name, some oranges are not orange. Some initially contain large amounts of chlorophyll, which makes this citrus green-colored in the first place. As it matures and ripens, the chlorophyll slowly disappears as the fruit is exposed to cool temperatures. That's when it gets its color. But this is also why, in warm areas across the world, oranges remain green. If you've ordered something small from Amazon, like a pen, a single book, or something else, you might have got it in a box that seemed way too big for your item. And it's not an accident, nor random. It's because of their complex shipping algorithm. It takes into account the size of other packages going to the same place, as well as the size of the shipping vehicle. The small item gets a box size that will fit the space inside the vehicle together with other packages, and keep boxes from sliding around. Physicist and inventor Percy Spencer discovered microwaves by accident. He was building a magnetron for some of his radar equipment. At one moment, he realized the chocolate bar he had been keeping in his pocket had begun to melt. He was curious about what was going to happen next, so he directed microwaves at eggs, which exploded, and popcorn, which popped. This is how he discovered a great tool to heat food that uses less energy than a conventional oven. In its original version, the clay-like substance we call Play-Doh today was a wallpaper cleaner. It was invented and sold for the purpose of lifting soot off of wallpaper. At the time it first showed on the market, you could only get it in an off-white color, but later they started selling it as a toy. The substance was produced in yellow, blue, and red. Today, you can get it in more than 50 colors. Bubble wrap had a somewhat different purpose at its beginning. It was supposed to be wallpaper. In the 1950s, when it first showed up, two engineers decided to glue two shower curtains together. That's how they trapped small bubbles of air between them. They were trying to create some sort of textured wallpaper, but it didn't take off. A couple years later, IBM had to ship some data processors and needed something to protect them, which is when the phenomenon of bubble wrap came up. One study showed that 1 minute of popping bubble wrap is as calming as a 30-minute massage. Why don't electric fans cool the air? You could set a thermometer in front of it and choose a turbo mode, but the temperature won't go down. In fact, the temperature might even go up if you leave the thermometer next to the working parts thanks to the electric current. A fan won't cool the air, but it will cool you or any other object with water inside. An electric fan improves air circulation in a closed space. Plus, it speeds up evaporation, which makes liquids, including the sweat on your skin, a bit cooler. Have you noticed pen caps have tiny holes on the top? It seems random at first, but it's actually a lifesaver. If you can accidentally swallow this cap, the hole ensures you can continue breathing because the cap won't completely block the airway. If you take a closer look at the night sky, you'll see stars come in different shapes and sizes. White is the most prevalent color, true, but they sparkle in shades of red, blue, and yellow too. But you won't see a green star. It's not that stars don't emit green light, it's just that our eyes don't see it like that. Stars vary in colors when they burn at different temperatures. The hottest stars appear blue, while the coolest stars seem to burn in red hues, but they all shine in multiple colors. They emit different light wavelengths that represent various parts of the color spectrum. We can't all perceive those wavelengths separately. We only see the dominant light wavelength, which means the dominant color. So, stars of medium heat emit green photons in most cases, but they just don't appear green. When we try to process something that generates red, green, blue, and yellow photons at once, our eyes see it as white. That's the same reason why mid-temperature stars, such as our sun, appear white to us. Why do we blink? To moisten and cleanse the eye, that's for sure. Every time you close your eyelids, the tear glands secrete a salty substance that sweeps over the surface of your eye. It then flushes away all those tiny dust particles and also lubricates the exposed parts of your eyeball. We usually blink every 4 to 6 seconds unless the eyes are more irritated. Then, we blink more frequently to keep them moist and clean. But not just that. Blinking also helps our brain to reset. It has to process so many things all the time, so it's fair to give it a break from time to time. So blinking rescues our brain around 15 to 20 times per minute. When we shut our eyes, we help our brain to power down and take a very short but still effective mental break. That's why we blink more when we're in the middle of a task that demands some serious mental activity. Why do we have nails? They're generally made of a specific type of protein you can find in fur, hair, claws, and hooves. It's called keratin, and unlike claws, nails are flat and wide, so they're more effective at shielding the tips of toes and fingers from potential injuries. Fingernails not only protect sensitive areas but also provide a rigid backing so you can take and separate small objects more easily. How would you pick up a single jigsaw piece or peel a sticker from its backing without nails? It would be almost impossible without additional tools. Apes and monkeys use their feet for such delicate tasks too. Primates have probably evolved nails because they needed help with simple tasks, such as grasping branches tightly and removing ticks. Raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, and cherries are not berries. To classify a berry, they have to have 3 layers: a protective outer one, a fleshy one in the middle, and finally, an inner part where you can find the seeds. Also, a plant must come from a flower with just one ovary and have 2 or more seeds. So, by this criteria, cranberries and blueberries are berries. Together with some more plants you wouldn't expect to be in this category: kiwis, bananas, watermelons, tomatoes, eggplants, and even peppers. You've probably heard your ears and nose are those body parts that never stop growing. This happens because the effects of skin changes and gravity. Other parts of your body change in the same ways, but you can't see it as well as you can see what's happening with your nose and ears. You'd need a drop of liquid, a state-of-the-art laser 3D printer, and a couple of hours of work to make the tiniest fidget spinner ever. Its width will be smaller than that of your hair strand. At least researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory managed to do just that. A double-stuffed Oreo cookie aren't double-stuffed, in fact. A math teacher weighed 10 regular Oreos, 10 double-stuffed Oreos, 10 mega-stuffed Oreos. Turns out, double-stuffed Oreos are only 1.86 stuffed Oreos. Chipotle peppers aren't some special type of pepper. They're good old jalapenos. Dried and smoked jalapeno is chipotle. In its gaseous form, oxygen is colorless and doesn't have any odor. But when it's liquid or solid, this substance looks pale blue. After being caught by a black hole, a star gets ripped apart by its enormous gravitational forces. Some parts of the star's remains hurtle into the black hole. The rest, in the form of a huge jet of plasma, is ejected with such force that it travels hundreds of light years away. Not so long ago, scientists decided the dino's family tree had to be redrawn for the first time in 130 years. Apparently, 2 species of dinosaurs had to be grouped together from the very beginning. Those were the lizard-hipped meat-eaters like T-Rex and bird-hipped vegetarians such as the Stegosaurus. A camel can drink up to 30 gallons of water in a bit more than 10 minutes. This water is stored in the animal's bloodstream. As for its fatty hump, it provides the camel with nourishment when there's little food around. Some sea animals like salmon or turtles use our planet's magnetic field to find their way home. Your lungs not only help you breathe, but they also produce blood cells. These cells are responsible for the clotting which stops bleeding. The lungs make more than 10 million of these tiny cells per hour. Only 2 letters never appear on the periodic table. Those are J and Q. Spin a ball when you drop it and it'll fly through the air while falling. This phenomenon is known as the Magnus effect. You can see it at work in different sports, for example tennis or baseball. Anatidaephobia is the fear that at any point, somewhere in the world, a duck or a goose may be watching you. The person isn't necessarily afraid that the duck or goose will get close to them or even touch them. They just don't like the feeling of being watched. It was first described in a comic strip to show you how anyone can be afraid of anything. Anything can be a phobia. A duck just watching my every move would certainly give me the heebie-jeebies. I might just quack up. Your favorite fruit candies may be shining because they're covered with carnauba wax. Many fruits, especially apples, have a thin layer of this wax too. Not only can it make the candies and fruit appear glossy, but it also makes your car shine. Peaches and nectarines seem different, but in fact, they're pretty much the same fruit. If the fluffiness gene is dominant, we get peaches. If not, we get smooth nectarines. Crows are pretty good at recognizing people's faces and have been found to remember people for a long time. This could be a good or a bad thing depending on how nice you are to them. You don't want to come across a crow that's holding a grudge against you. You probably can't tell which crow is which very easily, so it might be better to play it safe and just give them a little wave. In the city of Yoro in Central America, they have an annual event known as the Rain of Fish. Not that the locals get a choice for it anyways. Every year in May or June, a torrential rainstorm rolls through the town, leaving a mass of fish flopping around in the streets. The phenomenon is believed to be caused by waterspouts or water tornadoes which drop the fish far from their home. Seafood delivery for free? Yes, please. A single strand of spaghetti onto your fork has a name. It's called a spaghetto. In the Italian language, an I at the end of a word means that it's plural, while an O is singular. This goes for all types, like gnocco instead of gnocchi, fettuccino instead of fettuccini, and raviolo for a single parcel of goodness. Water can freeze and boil at the same time. This is called the triple point. That's when a substance can be solid, liquid, and gaseous at the same time. But there's only one pressure temperature that can make it possible. We're used to ranch dressing being white, but in reality, producers usually add titanium dioxide to make it as white as your sunscreen. Oh, sunscreen producers add some titanium dioxide to their products too. Same with Caesar and blue cheese dressings. Our moon used to have an atmosphere. Several volcanic eruptions happened on Earth's natural satellite around 4 billion years ago. They released immense volumes of gas, trillions of tons. It was so much that the gas didn't have enough time to escape into space. That's how an atmosphere was formed. Cold water heats up faster than hot. The speed of this process depends on the temperature difference between the liquid and its surroundings. That's why cold water needs less time to absorb heat, but it doesn't mean it'll boil faster than hot water. Zealandia is a drowned continent in the Pacific Ocean. It's often described as a continental fragment or a microcontinent. Its area is almost 2 million square miles, about half as big as the US. It went underwater about 23 million years ago. New Zealand is Zealandia's largest part that remains above sea level. People are still evolving. Scientists have been tracking several millions of human anomalies. It turns out some harmful genes are slowly but surely getting filtered out of human DNA. Stars look as if they're twinkling because of the turbulence in Earth's atmosphere. It makes the light from the stars move in a different direction before reaching our eyes, and this looks as if the light is shaking. It takes water 1,000 years to complete its continuous journey around the world. The whole process is known as the global ocean conveyor belt. Bismuth is a brittle, shiny white metal with a pink tinge. If you melt it and then let it cool really slowly, it'll form iridescent cubic crystals. Those Skittles and M&M candies are colored with beetles. Red food dye is made of carmine, which is made with cochineal beetles. Red lipsticks are made with these beetles too. The rocks, metals, and other minerals and things that make up the planet are packed into the ground more tightly in certain places than in others. This has surprising consequences. Gravity varies slightly depending on where you are. How high up you are also has an effect, so if you're at the top of Mount Everest, you'd also weigh slightly less. Don't look down. One scientist has a theory that a substance existed in ancient microbes before chlorophyll, that's the thing that makes plants green, evolved on Earth. This substance reflected sunlight as red and violet colors, which combined to make purple. If true, the young Earth may have been teeming with strange purple-colored critters before all the green stuff appeared. Apples taste better when they're sliced because they're exposed to oxygen. It activates the enzyme called polyphenol oxidase, responsible for ripening and visible browning. The same thing happens when you hit an apple. The oxygen enters the apple through tiny cracks and it starts to ripen. Are you into white chocolate? Well, it's actually not even close to real chocolate. It's basically a mixture of sugar, milk, vanilla, and cocoa butter. Cocoa butter isn't enough for chocolate. It should contain chocolate liquor or powder. The only product that never expires, even if you don't store it in the fridge, is honey. It has a low pH and lots of sugar. That's why organisms that cause spoiling can't live in honey. If two pieces of the same kind of metal touch in space, they bond and get stuck together. It doesn't happen on Earth because water and air keeps pieces apart. People are more honest when they're tired. That's why most confessions are made during late-night conversations. Firefighters usually extinguish flames with wet water. It's water mixed with special wetting agents. These are chemicals that help water soak into objects and spread everywhere more easily. The Sun is an average-sized star, and still it could fit 1,300,000 Earths. The star is also 333,000 times as heavy as our planet. People have been able to spell their emails in Morse code since 2004. That's when a new symbol, @ was added to the code for the first time. The character is actually called a comma and consists of the A and C signals with no break in between.
How can spiders survive when they lose a leg? When they're in a dangerous situation and try to run away, they can lose legs and regrow them only a couple months later. They'll survive without any problem because most of the time, their legs come off at break points. Those are joints that contain muscles and constrict, which help spiders minimize blood loss. If they lose a leg at the part that comes before the break point, the spider still sheds it, but it will lose more blood. It will be harder for the animal to recover in this case. Speaking of spiders, have you noticed how they sometimes stay extremely still for a long time? They're motionless while waiting for potential prey to land in their web. When moving around, they waste energy and drive unnecessary attention to themselves. Either a hungry bird praying for a quick snack will see it, or a spider will remain hungry because flies will be less likely to come near their web. When spinning a web, they waste a lot of energy. Even after the web is finished, a spider may have to wait for days or weeks to catch something. So, it's important to save as much energy as possible. Hunting spiders are way more active, but the majority of them are nocturnal predators. They spend their days relaxing, tucked away under a rock or in a nest. Roast potatoes can stay hot for a really long time, and this mostly has to do with the fatty, starchy crust that's like some sort of an insulating layer. When you pre-boil a potato, this causes its starch granules to absorb water and swell until carb molecules seep out to produce this type of thick gel. Since potatoes are in the oven, high temperatures drive off moisture. This makes the gelatinized starch on the outside of the potato chunk and creates a crispy crust. This crust traps the heat inside. The fat from the baking tray collects in cracks too, and the heat-keeping structure stays strong. Birds don't get electrocuted while perching on power lines because it's not voltages that will harm them, but voltage differences, and electricity wouldn't flow without them. So, if you see a bird standing on a single power line at, for example, 35,000 volts, the lack of a voltage difference is something that keeps the animal safe. But if it accidentally extends its wings and touches another power line that's at a different voltage, it won't end well. That's the reason why electricity companies make sure there's plenty of space between the cables. Have you ever wondered why airplane pilots won't try to land on grass when the landing gear doesn't deploy? The grass may seem like a good solution at first because it's soft, true. But the surface will neither be smooth nor even. When pressure is high, landing on grass can lead to unpredictable movements and cause issues such as structure formation. That happens because of bouncing and unequal pressure. This can even result in fuel leakage and prevent the doors from opening. Bald heads tend to be shiny, even though the skin elsewhere on the human body isn't. Most of our skin is covered with tiny hairs that give it some sort of velvety peach fuzz look. With male pattern baldness, the hair follicles tend to shrink and turn into skin cells, which means there's no hair there at all. And the scalp is especially shiny due to the sebaceous glands. They produce and secrete some kind of oily matter that protects our skin. Sebaceous glands are located all across our skin, but the scalp has way more of them. So, this oil coats the skin, which is why it turns into a more reflective surface. House cats will rarely meow at one another, but they become chatty with humans, and this could be related to domestication. The process of taming cats and keeping them as pets started nearly 10,000 years ago. Before that, cats were pretty much loners. They rarely encountered other cats, so they didn't even have to use their voices to communicate with each other. Instead, they communicated through their sense of smell, which included things like rubbing against a certain object, for example, a tree. So they didn't even have to come face to face with other members of their species to send a message. And that's how they mostly communicate today as well. But humans don't have such a good sense of smell as cats, so these foxy creatures had to think of a way to send us a message and still get what they wanted from us, which turned out to be meowing. If you're planning a day trip to a desert, for example, the Sahara in North Africa, you're going to want to bring good sunscreen, and a lot of water, of course, but also a snug sleeping bag if you're planning to spend the night there too. Deserts really become cold during the night. In the Sahara, temperatures go from an average high of 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day to 25 degrees during the night. Such dramatic change happens because of two main factors: humidity and sand. Sand doesn't retain heat that well. When light and heat from the sun reach a desert, sand grains from the top layer absorb heat. But they release it back into the air relatively quickly. So during the day, the sand radiates the energy coming from the sun, which eventually heats the air and leads to extremely high temperatures. And during the night, the sand is quickly losing heat once again. But this time, there's no sunlight that would reheat the desert. That leaves the sand colder than before and leads to such low temperatures. In arid deserts such as the Atacama Desert in Chile and the Sahara, the humidity is extremely low. That means the amount of water vapor in the air is almost zero. Unlike sand, water does well to store heat. Water vapor in the air traps heat close to the ground. It's like you cover the ground with a huge blanket. That way, you stop it from dissipating into the atmosphere. Also, when the air has a high level of humidity, it requires more energy to heat up. That means it takes more time for that same energy to disappear and for the surroundings to get colder. Since there's almost no humidity in deserts, such areas can both quickly heat up and cool down. If you microwave water for tea, it will taste worse than when it's made with a kettle. That's because the temperature of the liquid is the main factor for a good tea. Water should reach a rolling boil before you pour it over tea leaves, whether they're loose or bagged. It's an easy thing to do with tea kettles, both the electric and stovetop varieties. When the burner or the electric heating element is on, the water at the bottom of the vessel warms up. As it's getting hotter, water through the rest of the kettle comes to the boiling point. A microwave doesn't heat from the bottom up. It creates electromagnetic waves that randomly jump around the box. You probably notice when you try to reheat leftovers, they end up partially frozen in some spots and extremely hot in others. The same will happen with water because it's hard to control microwave energy. Overheated liquid won't be good for tea either. When water goes above 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the boiling point for water, it can destroy the compounds that give a tea its specific flavor. Have you ever wondered why those electrical plugs most Americans use have holes in the prongs? The story dates back to the early 20th century when Harvey Hubble Jr. invented different types of electrical plugs. He started with the detachable electric plug, which was the first ever of that type. Some of his designs had prongs with indents, those aligned with tiny bumps inside the electrical sockets. Such an indent and bump system secured the prongs in place after people would insert a plug into a socket. At some point, these indents gave way to holes, which worked in the same way. But that's just part of the story. Most of the modern outlets don't even have bumps anymore. They keep plugs from falling out of the wall by using friction and pressure. Today, some manufacturers insert a rod through all the holes in a line of prongs. That's how they lock them in place while encasing them in plastic. Some also say the holes save metal, which cuts costs of manufacturing in the long term.
Did you know that chickens can jump and fly too? Domestication of the chicken dates back to at least 2000 BCE. They do have the required feathers and muscles to fly, but they don't do it much anymore hundreds of years after they were domesticated. But if you give them the right motivation, they can do that. If they think the other side of the fence is cool, they can jump up to 6 feet. Some hens hop on the trees to roost. Picture a tree with a couple of chickens on it. Looks so funny. Their motivation is safety. The tree serves as a cover for them in the daytime and protects them from winged predators. Similarly, at night, the tree turns into a shelter from wind and rain and the possible attacks from ground predators. This doesn't have to be in the wild. Farms where chickens can wander around freely also have tree nests. Some sneaky chickens leave their coop and jump onto the trees. So, many chicken owners search for ways to keep them under control. Hey Siri, search for how to deal with jumping chickens? I'm now moving on to everyday items and the secrets they held. The twist ties and plastic bags on bread packs don't have random colors. They are color-coded based on the daily bread baked. Each day of the week has an assigned color. For example, blue twist tie stands for Monday, green for Tuesday, and red for Thursday. Now you can figure out how fresh your bread is. Color codes are helpful for employees too. They can easily spot the old loaves on the shelves. There's a popular saying, "You are what you eat." It turns out that our guts are also there to make us happy. Serotonin is the feel-good hormone. It's also a neurotransmitter. Many of us immediately associate it with our brains. Yet, interestingly, around 95% of the body's serotonin is produced in our digestive tract. Many of us often use the words herbs and spices interchangeably, but these are different seasonings. Spices come from every part of a plant or tree, like root, seed, or bark. But herbs are the plant's leaves. We generally add spice to food in roasting and during cooking. Herbs release their aroma faster, so we add them at the very end. Do you ever feel you've been watched and discovered that you're right? Well, that spider sense-like feeling is called gaze detection. Your brain senses when someone is staring at you. Research explains this as a sort of defense mechanism. A direct gaze can be a symbol of dominance, and that can be a potential threat. Humans evolved with this feeling in time. Strangely, it works when the person looks right at you. If their gaze is off just a few degrees to the left or right of you, your brain won't react this way. What about the urge to re-watch your favorite movies or listen to your songs over and over? You're not alone. This habit has some benefits for your mental health. This behavior eases your mind. When people feel overwhelmed, they'll have less self-control and be less motivated to complete hard tasks. You are drawn into The Office's first season again because when you watch, listen, or do something familiar, you don't have to spend the effort to monitor what you're thinking. So, it's a good way to have a quick mental reset. Here's another feeling. Imagine you're enjoying the sunset on a terrace or at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Out of nowhere, your inner voice whispers, "What if I jump?" This isn't coming from a darker state. You know, it's just sort of a feeling that appears when you're high up. There is a name for this. The call of the void, or the high place phenomenon, is a relatively new research topic, but more studies are on the way. Jim Carrey's great performance in The Truman Show is surely remembered. Did you know that the Truman Show delusion is an actual thing? The phenomenon is an issue related to cognitive neuropsychiatry. People with this delusion believe that they're being filmed and that the footage will be broadcasted for entertainment. There was a time when aluminum was more precious than gold. I know, it's hard to believe. We now wrap our sandwiches on this everyday item. If we go back to the 19th century, we would see aluminum as a hard-to-get element because it was literally hard to obtain until innovators found a way to extract it on large industrial scales. Then, the reign of aluminum was over. There are stories about the French ruler Napoleon III having an aluminum cutlery set that he served food to his special guests. We might as well talk about a time traveler's party held in 2009. The theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking invited time travelers to hang out. There was a huge banner hung up with the words, "Welcome, time travelers." No one showed up, but maybe travelers had prior engagements, and that's why they didn't attend the party. I swear I'm not crying because no one showed up to that awesome party. I was just cutting an onion. Why do we burst into tears when we chop onions? Because of a particular enzyme. Is there a solution? Next time, get some damp paper towel and put it on the cutting board next to the onion. The acidity that comes from the enzyme will go towards the wet paper instead of your eyes. The ancient Egyptian civil calendar was quite similar to the one we use now. They had 365 days divided into 12 months. But instead of spreading a 31st to some months, they would add those extra days to the end of the year. Now, let's turn our cameras to the animal kingdom again. Is there a benefit for zebras to have their fascinating pattern? Scientists asked this question too and experimented. They dressed up horses with zebra look-alike coats. The coat was covering the whole body of the horses but their heads. It turns out that zebra patterns repel flies. Scientists observed that flies only go for the heads of the animals and stay away from the horse bodies. Ants are known as hard-working animals, even in the tails. That's got a legit reflection in real life. They can carry up to 20 times more weight than their own body weight. These insects have other noble qualities too. If an ant gets seriously injured, it'll refuse treatment from the colony's paramedic ant. The ant knows that it can't make it, so instead of wasting the colony's resources, this ant forces the paramedic ant to carry on without it. Camels can survive around 15 days without drinking water. Many people assume that they store water in their humps. No, humps are for food storage in the form of fat. The water is kept in their bloodstream. Speaking of camels, in some countries, there's a tradition to hold camel beauty contests. For instance, a contest was held in the 2022 World Cup in Qatar as an attraction. You see a giant housefly in the house, but it flees from your ninja's hands. You might think that nature will take care of it in a couple of days, but actually, houseflies can live for about a month or two. The next fact is about an emergency on the road. Detachable car headrests can be used as an escape tool. You can break the window with the headrests if you can't leave the car by the doors. You should wedge the headrest between the glass and the windowsill. Aim a corner. Then, you hit the headrest as hard as you can to break the glass safely. You might have to hit a couple of times, but it eventually shatters. Don't give up after one try. Don't be shy. Share your wow facts with us. There are two sides to every story. Just like to a regular cotton pad. Two different textures, to be more precise. One is smooth, and you're supposed to use it for more sensitive areas of your face, for example, the eyes. The rougher side can help you remove makeup and clean your face in less sensitive areas, like the forehead. If you like having greenery in your home, you've probably noticed the flower pots have holes at the bottom. These holes are the reason your green friends live a happy life. They're extremely important for water drainage. Thanks to these holes, you'll avoid stagnant water buildup that can eventually ruin your plant. Also, thanks to those holes, roots can grow and expand beyond the limits of your pot. Have you noticed aviator sunglasses mostly have green lenses? It has something to do with their origin. First, they showed up in the 1930s. Before that, pilots had goggles to protect their eyes while they were in the air. High altitudes with glaring sun and sub-zero temperatures were a real test for their eyes. The goggles helped them with those issues, but there was another one. Since the temperature differences between the air outside and within the goggles were big, the lenses would fog up and obscure the pilot's view. So, the company Bausch & Lomb came up with teardrop lenses surrounded by a light metal frame. These lenses were dark green because this tint cuts out blue light, which is also a problem for pilots when they're flying above the cloud line. Plus, green lenses also reduce glare and improve contrast and sharpness. Holes in the side of your Converse sneakers? Are those really necessary? Well, they allow air to enter your shoe so your feet can stay cool. You can also use them to style up your shoes and tie them in different ways too. There are two reasons plastic bottles have grooves. First, if you're drinking cold water and it's hot outside, you'll see there's a lot of condensation on your bottle. Or maybe if you're playing some sport or working out. Your hands are sweaty, and if a bottle had a smooth surface, it would be more difficult to grip it, so the ridges are there to improve your hand grip. The second reason is that because of these ridges, manufacturers can use thinner plastic. That means they need less material in overall production. And that plastic is still firm enough for the bottle to maintain its shape. Wooden coat hangers are not just there to look nice. Since they're made of cedar wood, they bring a nice scent to your closet. Plus, they repel bugs. They're also quite firm, so they come in handy for heavy clothes, such as jackets. And it's hard to damage them, so they'll serve you longer. You may have noticed there's a colored square at the bottom of your toothpaste. These blocks mostly come in blue, red, green, and black. They are some sort of eye marks, since they help manufacturing machines at the assembly line recognize where and when to cut the toothpaste and seal the end of the tube. Some boots have loops at their top and back. Looks like a fashion statement, doesn't it? Or maybe it's something that manufacturers add for fun. But those loops actually have their purpose. With them, you can pull the shoe up when trying to wear it. Plus, you can easily hang them or use the loop for better support for the laces. Confession time. Remember those attachments your vacuum cleaner came with? Did you also put them somewhere aside and never use them again? They're actually pretty helpful when you're cleaning the house because you can use them for particular areas that are sometimes hard to reach with the regular attachment. We all know what the vegetable peeler is for, but besides peeling the skin of carrots or potatoes, you can use it for onions too. It may be faster than doing it with a knife, plus it will save you some onion tears. Some sweatshirts have something pretty specific in the neck area. A V-shaped stitch you can see in the middle of the collar. The ribbed insert, similar to the ribbing at the hem and the sleeves, would allow the owner to put the garment on more easily, and it wouldn't even lose shape. The V-insert would stretch, so a person wearing the sweatshirt could get their head through the neck. Its purpose was also to absorb sweat. In its early versions, sweatshirts had both the back and the front of the collars. Through time, they lost the back one, and this V-insert became something decorative since manufacturers started to stitch a V at the collar without using the ribbed material they had added before. Brightly colored squares or circles you see on food packages aren't an indication of vitamins, minerals, or certain flavors that food contains. And nope, it's not some secret code consumers are supposed to crack. It's actually for printing engineers. They're called process control patches or printer's color blocks. During the process of printing the food packaging, manufacturers use those colored blocks to check if the printing ink is correct. They compare the color of blocks they print to make sure the brand they print for has a consistent and recognizable quality all over the world. The majority of printers only use 4 colors: yellow, magenta, cyan, and black. Some printers have additional colors, such as green, orange, and violet. That's why you sometimes see multiple circles on certain packages. They test each ink color. Margins in notebooks. They're not there as some sort of a guide for taking notes and writing. Someone came up with a potential solution that was supposed to protect the written work from, well, rats. They used to be pretty common residents in people's homes. They are known for their diet, including basically anything, like paper, for example. So, people started adding wide margins as an appetizer that was supposed to keep rats full. This way, they wouldn't want to get to the main dish, the written pages. Suits have a buttonhole close to the top of the lapel. Manufacturers sew it shut so you can't open it without ruining your suit. And when you compare it to the other lapel, you see that one is completely smooth, without any clues. You won't find such an unpartnered buttonhole on a suit jacket only. Camp shirts, pea coats, and some other clothing pieces have them too. And they have to do with the history of lapels. The earliest ones showed up at the beginning of the 19th century. Before this, men mostly wear frocks with high collars. They would button them all the way up to the top. During hot days, they would relax the button stance, turn down the collars, and leave the top button undone. It was a relief from the swelter, plus their folded over laps would be symmetrical at the chest, and today, we recognize that as a lapel. People stopped using that buttonhole after they came up with the lapel, unless it was for some formal occasion. Like, for example, when you wanted to put a flower in there. That's why suit makers left it, as a fashion feature. Tea bags. It's pretty easy to guess what they're for, but they come in handy if you have smelly feet after a long day in your shoes. Just pop tea bags, unused of course, in your shoes during the night. By the time you wake up, tea bags are going to effectively absorb all the unwanted odors. binder clips can also have a helpful purpose besides their main one. You can clip your money to keep it together. Same is true for paper clips. If your favorite bracelet broke and you're looking for a way to hold it on, a paper clip might help. Just hook one through each end of the bracelet, twist it tightly, and your bracelet is good to go.
It's breakfast, and you crack open a hard-boiled egg. You find that it's green. Looks disgusting. Well, it looks like you cooked it for too long. This happened because of the thin sulfur layer in the whites and iron in the yolk. Though the mixture of these chemicals is black, it's such a thin layer mixed into the yellow yolk that it turns green. But don't fear, these strange green eggs, they're completely safe to eat. While sitting for a photo, it would be weird to say anything other than cheese to get that perfect smile. But in the 19th century, it was different. Photographers would ask their subjects to say prune instead. The reason was to obtain that thin, duck-like expression. It was considered a prim and proper way to present a photograph. Strawberries aren't even considered a berry and are more of a false fruit, further identified as multiple fruit. What we believe is that the tiny little brown or white things are seeds, but they're actually individual fruits attached to its flesh. But how did this mistake start in the first place? Well, the confusion began hundreds of years ago when it was first named. However, this was a long time before botanists were even around to help clarify this mistake. Sci-fi films are often inspired by real-life space exploration, but there's one thing that NASA implemented after watching a sci-fi movie. A 1929 flick, Woman in the Moon, introduced a countdown that built up anticipation. NASA found this helpful and started using it in 1969. Not only is it an exciting moment, but it does also have a practical use. It helps the massive team behind each launch ensure they're synchronized perfectly down to the last second. This one might change your appetite the next time you see a juicy apple. Usually picked around August to November, the shiny supermarket apples are covered in hot wax, then hot air dried and sent into cold storage. Before they arrive at the supermarket looking fresh, they've been in storage for anywhere between 6 to 12 months. I bet you can't do this. Try and hum while closing your nose. No noise came out, right? Without an exit for air, it's physically impossible to make any noise. The world's largest national park in Greenland covers a staggering 375,000 square miles. That's twice the size of California. But although it's huge, there are only up to 40 permanent residents in this massive area, making it one of the most isolated places on Earth. Issues with bad breath? Gum is the typical choice, but other things are just as effective. Cucumber is a great natural solution and a more efficient one. Working similarly to gum, it helps stimulate saliva production, but what makes it different from other odor defeaters is its water content. Washing away any unwanted pieces of food still remaining also helps to avoid a dry mouth, which causes odors. You would think that Z would be the last letter put into the alphabet, but it was actually J. Long ago in 1524, an Italian grammarian wanted to identify a way to separate I and J. Together, they were a vowel, and J was then used as a consonant that sounded like Y. It wasn't until 1633 when an English grammar book explained the proper use of J, and it was entered into the alphabet in the way we use it today. The first vacuum cleaner was invented in 1901, the size of a Winnebago, and it took 4 people to operate it. A petrol engine used to supply power also required a horse to move it around. I would suppose that it was mainly used for cleaning up after the horse in the end. It wasn't long after that they found easier ways to clean the house, and in 1910 the first handheld vacuum was invented. If you've been told that you sweat like a pig, there is no need to be offended. It's actually more of a compliment, as pigs don't sweat. All swine are born without sweat glands, and the only way to cool off is to find a nice puddle, or more famously, some mud. Umbrellas were invented around 4,000 years ago and were only socially acceptable for women to use them. Their original purpose was to keep the sun out of your eyes and as a fashion accessory. It wasn't until the mid-18th century that men were allowed to use them. And the modern, water-resistant version we use today was made. And most importantly, the very first dog umbrella was invented in 1965. Dentists can be very strict on what sweets you eat, so you would be amazed to learn that cotton candy was invented by a dentist. John C. Wharton, a dentist and confectioner, wanted to give his clients a treat every visit. Maybe he gave them this treat to ensure they came back more often. If we could theoretically build a highway to outer space and could adjust the effects of gravity, it would only take you an hour to drive to space if you drove at 60 miles per hour. Let's make this happen, Elon Musk. How heavy could a cloud be? It looks like it couldn't weigh too much as it floats easily up in the sky. But a cloud could weigh anywhere up to 1 million pounds. That massive cloud is able to float above you because the air's lighter up there and less dense than dry air below. You can see the same effect when observing oil floating on water. You think you yawn because you were bored or tired? Well, it's a myth. You yawn more often later in the day, but it's just your body helping you remain alert. Through inhaling cool air and stretching the muscles, it cools the flow to the brain. Researchers identified brain sizes in different species of animals based on their yawns. The larger the brain, the longer the yawn. So how long do you yawn? Playing video games regularly increases gray matter in the brain for all you gamers out there, which helps to boost brain connectivity through muscle control, memories, perception, and spatial navigation. An experiment at a New York medical center found that surgeons who played 3 hours of video games made 37% fewer mistakes and performed 27% faster than other non-gaming doctors. Have you ever wanted to be just a little bit taller? Well, get your space boots on. The human body can grow up to 3% taller when in space. While living on Earth, our spines are compressed by gravity. But in zero gravity, the decompression lets the spinal discs expand, allowing the spine to lengthen. Cows don't have full REM sleep while standing, but they can have a light nap. This is an evolutionary trait that helped their ancestors avoid predators. They stand idle during a power nap if they need to make a quick getaway. They do have full REM sleep, only by lying down. They only need 4 hours of sleep to fully energize for the next day. Women have more taste buds than men, and 35% of women are considered super tasters, and only 15% of men are. Not surprisingly, more women prefer pineapple on their pizza. Now, don't be triggered if you disagree. While sleeping, you're incapable of sneezing. This might seem impossible, especially when you have a cold. But while your body is resting, the nerves that help you sneeze are as well. While you sleep, the brain ignores any irritating sensations or tickling that would typically create the sneeze. Our calendar year once used to end in February. This is because it was the last month to be added to the calendar. A calendar year once only lasted 304 days, so there was plenty of room for more months. It was changed in the year 46 BCE to the calendar we know today by Julius Caesar. They previously followed the lunar calendar. Julius Caesar saw issues with this as it didn't match the seasons. He hired an astronomer who created a calendar based on the solar year.
So you have a sixth sense. It tells you where the various parts of your body are in space. Thanks to it, you can walk up a flight of stairs or touch your nose even with your eyes closed. Your vocal cords only produce a buzzing noise. Your nose, mouth, and throat determine what your voice will sound like. If you have a deep voice, your vocal cords are thicker and your cavities are larger than average, letting the sound resonate. By the time you wake up, you'll have forgotten 50% of your latest dream. After 10 minutes, you won't remember 90% of it. When you blush, your stomach lining goes red along with your face. It happens because your sympathetic nervous system's causing an increased blood flow throughout the body. Your hair follicles have the same receptors as your nasal passages. That's why your hair can detect scents too. Sandalwood can help you develop that superpower. Out of 5 million hair follicles on your body, only 100,000 are indeed on your head. An average human will have eaten 35 tons of food over a lifetime. That's like 3 school buses. No matter how hard you'll try, you'll never be able to tickle yourself. It's because your brain prepares the body for tickling and helps you avoid the typical laughing reaction. One human hair is so strong it can hold up to 3.5 ounces. If only the scalp were that strong as well, you'd be able to hold the weight of 2 elephants with your hair. Your eye has 256 unique characteristics, and your fingers, just 40 of them. That's why retinal scanning is more reliable than fingerprint scanning. 50% of your hand strength is in your little finger alone, yet the thumb is the most important finger. You wouldn't be able to grip without it. If you stretch out your arms to the sides, the distance from the middle fingertip of the left hand to that of the right hand is equal to your height. An average human produces enough saliva to fill 2 swimming pools over a lifetime. Hey, dive in! Your spine has a great memory. It remembers your posture, making it so difficult to change it for the better. You owe goosebumps to your ancestors for many years ago. Their hair used to stand up to make them look bigger and scarier to foes. Cats hiss and arch their backs for the same reason. Your left lung is a little smaller than your right lung to make some room for the heart. The right lung has 3 lobes and the left one just 2. Both of them are protected by your rib cage. Next time you get the hiccups, try bending over in a chair. Drinking from the far side of the glass also helps get rid of them. You can easily survive without your appendix, stomach, 1 kidney, or 1 lung. Hey, nice to know we have spare parts. A human eyebrow lives for about 4 months. After that, you get new ones. You, along with other humans, have the superpower of glowing in the dark, especially in the late afternoon. Your face has the strongest glow. Still, it's too dim for your eyes to pick it up unaided. The beating sound of your heart is, in fact, the clap of the valves inside opening and closing. The lyrics for that are lub-dub, lub-dub. You can't breathe and swallow at the same time. While you're breathing, the pipe leading to your stomach shuts down. When you're swallowing, the gateway to your lungs temporarily closes. Under 1% of all people are born with their hearts on the right side of the chest and not the left one. You blink 15 to 20 times per minute or 30,000 times a day. Your eyes have the fastest muscles in your entire body. They slow down to 5 blinks per minute when you're looking at a computer screen. Your eyes owe their color to a pigment called melanin. People with brown eyes have more melanin than green-eyed individuals. If you have blue eyes, it means the eye tissue is completely colorless. Your eyes get color just like water and the sky do. They scatter light and reflect blue light back. The first known person with blue eyes was born in the Stone Age, around 7,000 years ago. I wasn't around then. There are about 3 million sweat glands in your entire body. Many of them are on the soles of your feet and on your palms, forehead, armpits, and cheeks. With every sneeze, the air is traveling out of your nose at a speed of 100 miles per hour. There's no wax in your earwax. It's made of fat, skin cells, sweat, and dirt. Yum! Before you try to get rid of it, remember it protects the ear from bacteria, dirt, and dryness. Stress and fear boost its production. If someone made a camera out of the human eye, it would have a resolution of 576 megapixels. Your brain can hold up to 25 million gigabytes of data. Not my brain. You swallow every minute while you're awake and 3 times per hour when you sleep. That sums up to 600 swallows per day. Gulp. If you're left-handed, you most likely chew on the left side, and if you're right-handed, on the right side. Your fingerprints will always find a way to grow back their unique pattern, no matter how bad you damage them. Every human has a unique pattern of ridges and furrows in their ears. They also sound different, thanks to microscopic hair cells in your inner ears. You need a powerful microphone to pick up the noise they produce. The way you walk is your unique feature. Machines can easily distinguish your individual tiny ticks, bounces, and ways of swinging your legs you use with every step. Your sense of smell helps you taste 80% of the flavor of any food. That's why it seems so dull when you hold your nose or have a snack while traveling by airplane that makes your sense of smell weaker. Women are better at remembering faces and tasks for the future, but easily forget what has been done. It's the opposite for men. Your eyes can change color as you age, or even depending on your mood or dieting habits. 300 billion new cells are born in your body every day. Now that's recycling. Your fingers don't have a single muscle in them. Their joints move thanks to the muscles in the palm and the forearm. Your fingernails grow faster than your toenails. That's because you use them more actively, and they get more sunlight and air. Your eyes send a 2D upside-down image of the world to your brain. It quickly corrects it and turns it into a 3D right-side-up image that it's used to. There's more nerve cells and connections in your brain than there are stars in the Milky Way. If you decided to count them all, it would take you 3,000 years. To make it easier for you, you have around 100 billion neurons in there. The space between your eyebrows is officially called glabella. You're taller in the morning than in the evening. Gravity makes the cartilage around your bones compress over the day, making you shorter by the time you go to bed. In case you're right-handed, your fingernails on the right hand grow faster than your left one. That's because you use this hand more often and are more likely to damage it somehow. Your body's trying to protect it and sends more blood and nutrients its way. If you walk a healthy amount of steps every day, you'll have covered 100,000 miles by the time you're 80. It's like circling the equator 4 times. The largest muscle in your body is the gluteus maximus at the back of the hip, and you're sitting on it. But never mind. The tiniest muscle in your body is in the middle of your ear. Its main purpose is to stabilize the stapes, the tiniest bone in your body. It takes care of transmitting sound waves to your inner ear. You spend about 5 years of your lifetime eating, and 1/3 of your life sleeping. An average adult weighing 150 pounds has a skeleton weighing about 21 pounds. So I guess the remainder is meat and stuff. Your heart beats over 2.5 billion times over your lifetime. Your skin thickness is different throughout the body. You have the thickest skin on the palms of the hands and soles of the feet, and the thinnest is on your eyelids. It takes your skin cells 28 to 30 days to completely renew themselves. Even if you only have less than half of your liver left, it can still regenerate to its original size. Your taste buds only live for 10 to 14 days, then they renew. Then what, everything tastes fresh? Even when you're resting, your brain uses more than 20% of your body's energy to keep it going. The brain's main function of processing and transmitting data is really pricey when it comes to energy costs. Your big toe bears 40% of your body's weight. Without it, running and walking would be slower, shorter, and less efficient. Thanks to zero gravity, your discs in between each vertebra expand when you're in space. That's why you can grow up to 2 inches taller. An average adult body is home to 7 octillion atoms. That's 7 billion billion, or 7 followed by 27 zeros. Do the math. A caterpillar has more muscles than you do. It's 4,400 versus 650. Your peripheral vision is almost completely black and white. It's because you have more color-detecting cones in the center of your retina than at the sides. An average adult human body has enough fat in its cells to produce 7 bars of soap. Your sweat itself doesn't smell like anything. The bacteria living on your skin mix with it and give it that notorious smell. You get red eyes in photos because when the camera flash goes off, your pupils don't have enough time to constrict. A large burst of light reaches your retina and it bounces back. Your legs feel lead-heavy when you're afraid because of the adrenaline that gets in your system. It turns on the fight or flight reaction. Your body sends blood flow to your most needed areas to let you take action and protect yourself. Women can distinguish more colors than men because they have 2 X chromosomes and men only have 1. Even if something is wrong with one of the chromosomes, a woman can still see colors correctly. That's why women are rarely colorblind. No matter how slim or plump you are, you have the same exact amount of fat cells as everyone else. When you work out and diet, they don't go anywhere, but shrink in size and can grow back again. All muscles in your body are connected to bones at 2 ends to be able to pull and create motion. The only exception is your tongue. It's connected to a part of your neck on one side and is free on the other side, so you can make funny sounds. The weird-looking flies you see right in front of your eyes every now and then are eye floaters. You see them because of tiny structural imperfections in one particular part of the eye that get in the way of light. They get worse with age. Oh goody. An average woman speaks about 20,000 words a day, while an average man only speaks 7,000 words. That's because the brain region responsible for language skills and social interactions is larger in females. Your hands and feet alone would look rather creepy. They also contain more than half of the bones in your entire body. Each hand has 27 bones, and each foot has 26. Your thumbs have their own pulse because there are big arteries inside them. That's why you can't feel your pulse in the neck with your thumb. You spend 10% of the time when you're awake with your eyelids closed. It's all those times you're blinking. Humans are capable of using echolocation, like bats and dolphins. With some training, you can find your way in complete darkness, analyzing the surroundings by sounds bouncing off objects. Oh, need to practice that. On average, it takes 7 minutes to fall asleep. There are some techniques to speed up that process to 120 seconds, though. You can physically see your nose, but the brain chooses to ignore it. Otherwise, it would stand in the way of your vision. Plus, it would be out of focus. Around 12% of people can't dream in color. There used to be more of them before color TV had been invented. All your muscles relax at the same time right after you've fallen asleep. Your brain thinks you're about to fall and sends quick signals to all of your muscles to awaken them. That's why it sometimes feels like you're literally falling. You've inherited fingers that get wrinkly from water from your ancestors. It gave them the grip they needed to survive in rainy weather. Your toes get wrinkly too, to let you stand on a wet surface safely. Many centuries ago, people used their wisdom teeth to chew through tough plants and roots. As their brains grew bigger, leaving less space in the mouth, these teeth became the extra ones. Now you can just cook your food and survive without them. Every day, an average woman unknowingly puts on about 515 chemicals on her body. They come from deodorants, shampoos, conditioners, moisturizers, and other beauty products. Most of them are harmless. You can't sneeze when you're sleeping because the nerve cells in your nose that activate sneezing are sleeping too. You can't sense smells in your sleep either. An average person has around 250 hairs per eyebrow, but some lucky fellows have a total of 1,100 hairs. They keep raindrops and sweat from getting in your eyes. Your skeleton completely renews itself every 10 years or so. The process never stops, but slows down with age. That's why your bones become thinner. An adult takes 12 to 16 breaths per minute. It adds up to a total of 17,000 to 23,000 breaths daily. If you stretch your entire network of blood vessels, its length would be enough to circle the Earth twice. That's over 60,000 miles, and you would be very sore if you did that. Women have more taste buds on their tongues than men. 35% of women are super tasters and have more than 30 taste buds in the space the size of a hole punch on their tongue. That's an interesting comparison. Sugar is sweeter and sodium is saltier to them. Blondes have the biggest number of hair follicles, around 146,000. Second place belongs to black-haired people. They have 110,000 follicles. If you have brown hair, there are around 100,000 hair follicles on your head. With an average of 86,000 follicles, redheads have the least dense hair. As you age, your feet might get bigger, but it doesn't mean your bones are growing. It happens due to weight gain and loose ligaments that make your feet flatter and wider over time. When you have that stomach in your throat feeling on a roller coaster, some of your organs are really shifting. It happens to your intestines and stomach, which are connected rather loosely and is harmless. It says here. Your teeth have enamel on the outside that makes them just as strong as a shark's. They aren't as sharp, though. Your hair can stretch about 30% of its length when wet. Your brain constantly needs oxygen and uses 20% of its reserves in your body. When you're trying to solve some problem, it can even use more oxygen, up to 50%. If you decided to smooth out all the wrinkles in your brain, it'd be a flat surface the size of a pillowcase. As you're listening to music, your heartbeat syncs with the rhythm. Faster tempos make it beat faster. Your diaphragm sometimes twitches, which makes you suddenly intake more air. Your throat closes and interrupts the intake. This is how hiccups work. Unlike what every space movie tells you, you won't instantly freeze if you got into open space without a suit. Space vacuum is a great insulator, so you would retain your heat for some time. Just don't make a habit of it. The atoms in your body are billions of years old. Nearly all of them were made in a star, and many have come through several supernovas. It makes you a big chunk of stardust. Scientists still don't know why humans yawn. The most popular theory says it happens to cool down your brain and regulate body temperature. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even chimpanzees and gorillas have lower jaws that slope down and back from their front teeth. When you're breathing, most of the air is going through one of the nostrils. After a few hours, it starts going through the other, and they keep switching like that. Your nose can pick up about 1 trillion smells with 400 different types of scent receptors. The sound you hear while cracking knuckles are gas bubbles bursting in your joints. Ooh, more fun body sounds. You burn calories when you're just breathing, watching TV, and even sleeping. By the time you turn 60, you will have lost almost half of your taste buds. That's why most elderly people don't notice the unusual or bitter taste. It only takes you 0.05 seconds to recognize a sound. That's 10 times faster than blinking. It's virtually impossible to destroy a human hair. Water, cold, and corrosion can do nothing to it. The only way to go is to set it on fire. Nah, don't do that. Around 1% of people are missing a special lens in the eye and can see ultraviolet. Famous Impressionist painter Claude Monet belonged to that 1%. When you sleep in a new place, half of your brain stays awake. Thanks to that, you'll be able to quickly get up if you have to protect yourself from something or someone. The way your sneeze sounds depends on your nose size. The larger the nose, the bigger the sneeze, because more air can go in and out. All the strangers from your dreams are real people you've met at some point in real life. You just didn't remember them. Unlike other cells, neurons can't replace themselves. If you typed 60 words per minute for 8 hours a day, it would take you 50 years to type the human genome. That sounds like a big waste of time. There's a name for the dip between your upper lip and nose. It's philtrum. Some people can navigate using the magnetic field of the planet, just like birds. Me? Nah, I can barely use my GPS.
No, you can't see the Great Wall of China from space. It's a cool myth, but it's still a myth and has nothing to do with reality. NASA confirmed it, and now you know it too. Still, the wall is a magnificent place, and you're lucky today. I'm taking you there, so fasten your seatbelts. We're going to China, the biggest Asian country, the third biggest country in the world, and with over 1.3 billion people living there, is still the most populated one, even though India is getting closer and will probably take the first place soon. China is also one of the oldest nations in the world. It has 3,500 years of continuous written history, but the civilization existed long before that. Historians believe that China wasn't populated by settlers that came from somewhere else. The Chinese civilization most likely got formed from local Stone Age people who lived on the territory since the prehistoric period. So no wonder that the country is full of history and ancient landmarks, and I'll show you a couple. We are at the Great Wall. It's over 13,000 miles long, almost 5 times the distance between New York and Los Angeles, or a bit longer than the distance between North and South Poles. This is impressive, even today. Of course, it didn't take a day to build it. In fact, the wall was being built for centuries. Maybe you know that ancient cities had walls around them to protect the locals from the invaders? Yes, Chinese cities had them too. The first Chinese emperor united the country in 220 BC and got a brilliant but very ambitious idea to turn all city walls into one big wall that would defend the country's borders. So the process started. In the beginning, the wall was made of rammed earth and wood. Every next emperor would pick up the big wall project, strengthening and extending it, repairing, but also modernizing construction techniques. Some used brick to build the wall, some moved on to granite and marble blocks. Watchtowers and platforms weren't there from the beginning as well. They were added 19 centuries after the construction started. So the wall is quite inconsistent in terms of material, but it only adds more charm to the construction and shows how much effort and time it took. You can notice that some bricks have writing carved on them. They were left by the workers who were building the wall. The purpose of those writings is quality assurance. They contain such information as location, quantity, and responsible officials. So in case of problems with the quality of materials or constructions, it would be known who was responsible for that. Also, mind that the wall is poisonous. To prevent erosion of the wall by insects, arsenic, a poisonous chemical element, was used in construction. So better not lick it in case you had this weird urge. The construction stopped at the end of the 19th century because the wall lost its strategic and military importance in the world due to technological advances. Walls are way less efficient than they used to be, coming close to zero efficiency. So the construction lasted over 2,000 years, still making it the longest construction project in the world. Unfortunately, today the Great Wall isn't in the best shape. It's estimated that only 8% of the wall is in good condition, and the rest is considerably damaged. Also, around 1/3 of the wall has disappeared without a trace due to both natural erosion and human damage. Also, many bricks were taken away from it in the last century to use in building farms and homes. The wall is being deconstructed stone by stone even today, but this time by tourists. Quite a few of them take a stone as a souvenir. That's a total of a lot of stones, considering that over 50 million tourists visit the Great Wall every year. So we're not taking a souvenir from our today's trip, just preserving the memories. Let's now pay a visit to the Forbidden City. It's an imperial palace that took 16 years to build and was completed 600 years ago. To this day, it's the largest palace in the world. It has 980 buildings and over 8,000 rooms. Why forbidden? Well, centuries ago, ordinary people like you and me couldn't just walk the streets of that town, since it was considered a divine place and was home to the emperor. No one could enter or leave the city without the emperor's permission. Today, the Chinese more often refer to it as former palace, but of course in Chinese. I just can't pronounce that. The designs there aren't random at all. The details reflect the traditional Chinese architecture, and even the colors are chosen with the help of feng shui. The roofs of the city are yellow, which represents the supreme power of the emperor. Most walls and pillars of the city are red, representing fire, earth, and strong support. The floors there are made of so-called gold brick. These are not actual gold, but surprisingly, they are just as valuable. It's very hard to make them, and especially to copy the ancient technique. 2 original tiles from the Forbidden City were sold for 800,000 yuan. It's $115,000. You can also see animal statues on roofs. Just like colors, animals have meaning in Chinese culture. Dragons, phoenixes, and lions are the most powerful ones. Dragons symbolize strength and good luck and are crucial for the culture. They appear everywhere, in idioms, legends, astrology, art, and so on. In ancient China, emperors were considered sons of dragons, so it seems like the Targaryens aren't the only ones after all. And ordinary people weren't even allowed to have items with dragons. As for a phoenix, in Chinese mythology, their rare appearance during the ascent to the throne of a new emperor is a good sign of harmony. In feng shui, it's also a symbol of luck, and when used correctly, it's believed to bring positive energy to the house. Lions signify strength and power. They always come in pairs, a male and a female, and they're the guards. The number of animal statues on the roof signifies the importance of the building. The city is made of wood, and without any nails used, they are considered violent, so they aren't welcome. You can imagine that a wooden city is a serious fire hazard. A little fire and the city with a 6th century history will quickly turn to ashes. So, fire prevention is taken very seriously there. The city has a whole bunch of firefighting equipment, and there's even a special fire brigade that knows the whole layout of the city better than their own apartment and watches the city every day. Walking around the city, you can notice something very unusual. No birds are sitting on the roofs here, ever. When it was built, the birds were taken into account, and the engineers constructed the roofs in a particular way to ensure that no bird can land and sit on them. The roof spines are wider than the width of birds' claws, and the slope of each roof is higher. Also, the roofs are made of slippery tiles, so the birds can't land there. What do they have against the birds? Well, this way the city stays cleaner and looks more magnificent. So, there are no birds, but there are over 100 cats in the city. They actually are an important part of this story. Some of these kitties are royal descendants. You see, 2 royal dynasties that lived in the city kept cats. The dynasties later collapsed, but the cats stayed in the city and have lived there ever since. Of course, some stray cats have joined the royalty over the years. But hey, no one minds it, and no DNA test has been made to see who's royal and who's not. After all, they all equally patrol the city, hunt mice, and possibly some stranded birds, and guard the city. So all cats are welcome. In the airport, they usually ask you to take your laptop out of your backpack and put it in a separate bin while going through the security check. Laptops are dense and the X-rays can't see through them, so you could be hiding something dangerous there. If it's out and it's on its own in a separate bin, it's easier for the scanners to capture a prospective hazard. Normally, the messages you send using iMessage are blue, but look, this time it turned green. No need to panic. It's not like the user blocked you or anything. It's just that you sent a regular SMS and not an iMessage. iMessages can only be sent to people who own an Apple device. So, if the recipient doesn't have one, they're all gonna be green. Another reason your phone might opt for an SMS is that your iPhone isn't connected to the internet. iMessages go through the web, and SMS uses a cellular signal. The jacks you put in your devices have little plastic rings on them that separate different sections. These sections are called pins, and each of them serves a different purpose. Each plug will have at least one plastic ring because any plug must be separated into at least 2 pins. One of them is there to cancel out any interference, and the other to carry the signal. If, for example, your headphones have 1 ring and 2 sections, they have a mono playback. They deliver the same sound to both your right and your left ear. If there are 2 rings and 3 sections, then there is a basic one to cancel out interference and the other 2 for either ear. 3 rings and 4 sections mean that you have a set, 1 basic, 1 for either of the ears, and the last one is the microphone pin. I bet you've never even noticed, but all credit cards, no matter what bank or country they come from, are the exact same size. The first ever credit card was issued in 1958 by the Bank of America. And later, the international standard was established for every issuer around the world to follow. The standard dictates both the proportions and the thickness. Whistles can work perfectly fine even if they don't have that ball inside, yet they all have it. That's because even though there's a sound without the ball, the noise it creates is very flat and not distinguishable enough. When you blow, the ball starts moving around inside, creating different pitches and making the noise more noticeable. Jeans have had those metal rivets ever since they were invented. Jacob Davis, the man who made the first pair of jeans, added copper rivets to those spots where the pants were more likely to rip to make them stronger. Today, they have more of a decorative purpose because they're distinctive and traditional for jeans. A basketball has little dots all over its surface, and they serve as friction points. It's important for that ball not to slip out of the hands. There were times when they played basketball with a soccer ball. The floor was very slippery, and it was impossible to play because you'd have to be very careful just to keep the ball in place. So, they had to redesign it. The more points of contact any object has with some surface, the more friction there is, and the less likely it is to slip on the surface. So, that's how the ball got its dots. Those holes at the end of the handles aren't just there for you to hang your pans easily. You can also place your cooking spoon in there while making a meal. It'll hang right above the pan, and the sauce won't spill around. Make sure to tap off the sauce or food beforehand though, so that it doesn't go down the spoon's handle. You unload the dishwasher, and while everything is dry, your plastic containers get all wet once again. Seems like they never get dry, and that's actually true. The reason for it is the material. The dishes heat up and cool down slowly, so the remaining water evaporates and dries out easily. When you take out those plastic containers, they cool down way too fast, so the water doesn't dry out of the surface and just stays there. Another water source is those upside-down cups that collect water on top. But have you noticed that cups have chips on the bottom? They serve as a water drain in the dishwasher. So yeah, these cups don't accumulate water in the dishwasher. Take a look at aluminum foil. One side of it is always shiny, and the other one is dull. When producing the foil, they flatten it with rollers. It's so thin that the rollers tear it. So they take 2 layers at a time. So the sides facing the roller remain shiny, and those in the middle stay dull. We say it all the time, 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. without thinking. Why such a choice of letters? It's just Latin, which is still used for many other abbreviations. AM stands for ante meridiem, which means before noon. PM stands for post meridiem, meaning afternoon. Same with pounds, which are noted as lb from the Latin phrase libra pondo. Most movie theater seats are red, and the reason isn't better visibility, but quite the opposite. In low light conditions, red is the first color that fades away in our eyes. And that's what we want in a movie theater, to see nothing but the screen. Also, movie theaters were inspired by fancy Italian opera houses, so that's another reason too. Have you ever wondered why so many Disney characters wear white gloves? Well, back when animated movies were black and white, putting white gloves on characters was a way to make the hands stand out from the rest of the body. Then animation evolved, but the gloves stayed as a Disney tradition. But there are other reasons too. Human hands make animal characters more humanized and relatable. Also, those gloves are way easier to animate, which speeds up the process. Cats often rub their bodies against your legs, but do you know why they do it? This way, they transfer their scent to you, marking you as their territory and as their human. It's also a sign of affection. By doing this, they show that you're part of their inner circle. Wonder why it's so hard to swat a fly? Well, to a fly, we're sloths. That's because they see things in slow motion compared to us. Species have a different perception of speed. The speed we see will be twice as fast for a turtle, and it will be 4 times slower for a fly. Turn a video to 0.25 speed and imagine someone approaching you at this pace. Well, that's how a fly sees you. So yeah, it has enough time to escape. Road signs have different shapes and colors to send different signals to your brain. Oval shapes are more friendly, and squared ones are very familiar and secure, so they're usually regulatory. Triangles reflect instability, so they're usually warning signs. And finally, the stop sign has a special octagon shape, the most unusual and unsettling. It's supposed to draw your attention to it. Together with the red color, this sign stands out the most, just like it's supposed to. Some sidewalks have little plates with bumps on them. We don't pay much attention to them, but they're very important for visually impaired people. They signal a slope that then leads to a crosswalk. Also, there are several patterns that signal different things. Name the school grades: A, B, C, D, and F. No E. But why? The modern grading system dates back to 1897. In the beginning, it was all the letters from A to E. A meant excellent. B was good. C was fair. And D was passed. Below that was an E, or fail, which was often confused with the opposite, excellent. So soon enough, it was changed. F for fail is way more intuitive. How long do you think ice cream has been saving humanity on hot summer days? For many centuries. No one knows for sure the story of how ice cream was discovered, but it likely dates back to at least as far as the 4th century BCE. Of course, it wasn't the ice cream we know today. Alexander the Great, the king of Macedonia, would enjoy snow and ice covered in honey and nectar. That's the early ice cream. The Roman Emperor Nero Caesar was eating snow flavored with fruits and juices. How would those guys get snow if they lived in very warm climates? Well, their helpers would run up a nearby mountain to bring some from up there. I'm not sure how they were dealing with it without a refrigerator, but I guess they had ways. Some historians say that there were deep pits covered with straw, and the snow was stored there after harvesting it from the mountains. How it didn't melt on the way to the pit remains a mystery to me, but history has many of those. Okay, so far it's just been ice and snow, but we all know it's not the ice cream we're used to. One of the main ingredients of the dessert we know today is milk, and this one most likely appeared in China around the 7th century CE. Back then, the Tang dynasty was ruling the country, and the emperors probably were the first ones to eat ice cream that contains milk. Back then, it was made from buffalo, goat, or cow milk. To enhance the flavor and aroma, they were adding camphor to it. Then, metal tubes would be filled with the mixture and stored in an ice pool to freeze. Let's leave China for a little bit and move to the Arab world during medieval times. Time to observe what frosty treats they ate there. They used to drink icy refreshments, the earlier versions of sorbet. There, they were typically made of pomegranate, cherry, or quince. Soon after, the Europeans picked it up, and it became quite popular in Europe too. The Italians and the French are the ones who especially adored it, so they took it from there and perfected it into their own versions. In the 17th century, Antonio Latini became the first person to officially record a recipe for his sorbetto. It contained fruits, ice, but also sugar and milk. This is the recipe that most culinary historians consider to be the first official ice cream. The Italians perfected their own type of sorbet called gelato. In Italian, it means frozen. No one is sure about who exactly invented gelato, but everyone knows the guy who opened the first cafe in Paris and started selling it. An Italian guy from Sicilia opened his Il Precope in 1686, and the cafe became a favorite meeting place for famous intellectuals at that time. That's how the French were first introduced to the Italian gelato, which was sold in porcelain bowls resembling egg cups. But you have to remember one important thing. Never call gelato ice cream, especially in front of Italians. Even though these two might seem similar, there are many significant differences. Gelato contains way less fat, less air, and the flavor is more intense, and it's also served warmer than ice cream. So that's the Italian way. The French have perfected their own frozen dessert, the fromage. This translates from French as cheese, but in fact, it has nothing to do with it. Originally, it was made of cream, sugar, and orange flower water. Even today, the cream is an important ingredient, so the fromage is creamier and heavier than a gelato. Also, did you know that eggs are used to produce both? Yes, it's an important gelato and fromage ingredient that gives the dessert the necessary fat, but also a specific flavor. We haven't covered America yet. Most likely, ice cream was brought to the USA by European immigrants. The first ice cream parlor in the States opened in 1790 in New York. But until the beginning of the next century, it was only available to the elite. Once it became more common, of course, it took over the country. It couldn't be any other way, could it? When NASA astronauts were asked what they missed most, ice cream was at the top of the list. Today, 9% of all produced cow milk in the USA is used to produce ice cream. The people who love ice cream most in the world live in New Zealand. The country is the biggest per capita ice cream consumer in the world. The second one is the United States. What do you think the most popular ice cream flavor is? Yeah, that's vanilla, of course. The second most popular flavor is chocolate. Turns out, chocolate ice cream was invented earlier. That's because vanilla wasn't available for a long time. Today, most vanilla is imported from Indonesia and Madagascar. Over 1,000 ice cream flavors exist. There are quite a few really weird ones, like hot dog flavor, bacon, avocado, licorice, octopus, jellyfish flavor, and even roasted garlic. Then there's also cheese ice cream, and it's a real and very common thing in the Philippines. The Philippines only got ice cream in the 19th century, but it wasn't widely available until a whole century after that. After refrigeration became widespread, an American opened the first ice cream parlor in the country, serving ice cream of 3 flavors: vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. Soon after, many more people started producing the frozen treat, incorporating locally available products like mango, avocado, and coconut. Instead of cow milk, Filipinos traditionally use milk from domestic water buffalo, which is also used to make white cheese. In the second half of the 20th century, cheddar cheese was first imported to the Philippines, and it became an instant favorite. It's the ingredient of the famous Filipino spaghetti and a common topping for pastries. Without thinking long, they combined their favorite cheese with their favorite dessert, ice cream, and they got an amazing creamy, salty sweet cheese ice cream. So yes, that's a long story. We mentioned ice drinks, sorbet, and ice cream. But there was no word about popsicles. That's right, popsicles didn't exist for a long time. In fact, they were only invented by accident in 1905 by an 11-year-old boy called Frank Epperson. On a cold night, he was mixing sugary soda powder with water and forgot it outside after. After sitting there all night, it got frozen. When the boy returned and found it, he had to lick it off the wooden stick he was stirring it with. He liked it so much that he started producing them. He called them Epsicles, honoring his own name, but later the name evolved into a popsicle. Ice cream cones were invented just a year before popsicles in 1904. So, a guy was selling waffle-like pastries at a fair. Right next to him, there was another guy selling ice cream. At some point, the ice cream guy ran out of dishes and didn't know what to do. So, his neighbor rolled his waffle and offered to sell ice cream in them. The history of ice cream isn't even finished yet. Frozen treats keep being invented even today. For example, Slurpees were only invented in the late 1950s. Omar Knedlik was working at Dairy Queen in Kansas City, and the soda fountain broke down. To keep the beverages cool, he put them in the freezer. They turned slushy, and that's how the guy got the idea to make a machine that makes frozen beverages. He even created the Icy name and designed a logo for the brand. Several years later, 7-Eleven bought the right to sell the drinks, and they got popular. The newest ice cream-like invention is Dippin' Dots. In 1988, a microbiologist wanted an easier way to feed cows, so he started to freeze cow feed. Then he thought a little bit more and figured out that you can freeze other food, not only cow feed. So he started to freeze ice cream, and it was a blast. That's it for today. Maybe you can come up with something too, and will forever be imprinted in the ice cream history, like all these heroes we mentioned today. There are sharks that glow in the dark. For example, swell sharks. They live in the dark ocean depths, almost 1,700 feet under the surface. No one knows why exactly, but they emit a fluorescent glow only other swell sharks can see. Scientists detected the glow because they used filters that blocked out yellow light. They think that could be the way for these big fish to communicate with their buddies. This glow helps sharks fight infections on a microbial level. Cowbirds have secret passwords they use to recognize each other. They're a specific type of parasite bird since they lay their eggs in other bird species' nests. The young cowbirds have an inner mechanism where they recognize their species singing, like some sort of secret password only they know. That's how they manage to find others of their kind. A grizzly bear has an incredibly strong bite. It may look cute, but if you're close to this big guy, you better stay out of reach of its sharp claws and especially its mouth. Its bite force is more than 8 million pascals, which means it can crush a bowling ball. Some animals have skin-deep stripes, and others have more superficial ones. Tigers are in the first group. Not only is their fur striped, but their skin is as well. It's the same with some other furry big cats, like snow leopards. Giraffes and zebras are in the second group, since they have patterns only on their coats. Speaking of zebras, do you think they're black with white stripes or white with black stripes? At first, it really looks like the second option is correct. Their black stripes mostly end towards the inside of their legs and on their bellies, and the rest of it is white. But that's not true. Surprisingly, they're black with white stripes. All of their fur, both white and black, grows from follicles that have something called melanocyte cells. All animals have these cells. They produce a pigment called melanin, and it gives color to their hair and skin. When it comes to zebras, chemical messengers tell which melanocytes send pigment to which area of fur. That's why zebras have a black and white pattern. But white is not actually its own pigment. It's an absence of melanin. So, black is their default color. Koalas have fingerprints that are so close to ours that they could even taint crime scenes. It doesn't seem like they have a lot in common with humans, but take a closer look at their hands. They have distinctive loops and arches. So if any koalas want to do something illegal, it would be a good idea for them to wear gloves. Ghost crabs growl when they're around creatures they don't like or find threatening. They do it using teeth in their stomachs. First, They'll let you know they'll defend themselves if you try anything by showing you their claws. If that doesn't work, they'll go for fearsome growling noises like dogs. But the noise is coming from rubbing their 3 elongated hard teeth inside their stomach. Ghost crabs produce the same noise when they're grinding up food. Speaking of teeth, did you know narwhal tusks are actually some sort of an inside-out tooth? Unlike the majority of other whales, narwhals are the ones that come with a large tusk, or tooth that grows from the inside of their jaw. It has up to 10 million nerve endings, and they're unprotected, which means its tusk is very sensitive to any type of contact. It's almost like a piece of skin, because tusks usually don't have many nerve endings. Up to 95% of humans are right-handed, and it's the same with bottlenose dolphins. There are even more right-handed ones among them than among humans. During one study, scientists found that bottlenose dolphins turn to their left side over 99% of the time, which means they're right-handed. They place their right side and right eye closer to the ocean floor as they go for prey, such as squids, shrimps, or smaller fish. More cool facts from the ocean. Did you know humpback whales use bubbles when they go after their prey? You might think they don't need any special method considering how large they are. But when they're lurking for prey in the open waters, these whales team up and use something called a bubble net technique. While swimming in an upward spiral, they blow bubbles underwater. These bubbles make it difficult for fish to escape. The oldest evidence we have of domesticated cats dates up to 12,000 years ago. Researchers discovered this almost 20 years ago when they were digging through an ancient village in Cyprus. They found cat bones right next to human ones, which suggested they were close even when their lives came to an end. Humans were hunters, so they domesticated dogs first, somewhere up to 29,000 years ago. Dogs helped them catch other animals, but they didn't think they needed cats until they started to settle down and store surplus crops. Mice became frequent guests in grain stores, so cats came in handy in those times. Puffins are quite innovative when they want to scratch their bodies. They can surely be proud of their stunning beaks, but they obviously think it's not enough for scratching. Researchers noticed they tend to spontaneously take a small wooden stick to scratch an itchy spot. There's a special type of ant that only lives in a small part of Manhattan. The Broadway medians at the 63rd and 76th Street is the area these crawling critters decided was the best spot for them. The Manhattan looks like it's from Europe, but no European species can actually match it. Hey Potterheads, can you believe there's a thing like chocolate frog? Well, not quite, but it looks like it. New Guinea and Australia weren't always separated. They spent millions of years together until about 12,000 years ago, rising sea levels divided them. Since they were together for so long, some animals and plants still inhabit both areas, including green tree frogs. These frogs have spread really far and wide, and some of them, who live in hot, swampy regions surrounded by plenty of crocodiles, actually look like they're made of chocolate. We all know flamingos for their specific color, but they're not actually pink. They're born gray, and that's how they would stay if it weren't for their diet of blue-green algae and shrimp. These foods have a specific natural dye, which is why flamingo feathers turn pink over time. These little Tasmanian devils grow up and leave their moms. They socialize together, forming bonds that last for the rest of their lives. Not only them, cows also have stronger social ties than we think. They like to socialize, and they make long-lasting friendships. One research even discovered their heart rates significantly increase as a sign of stress when they're separated from their BFFs. Imagine you could simply freeze yourself solid during the cold winter days instead of listening to your teeth chatter and trying to tighten your jacket. That's what frogs can do. Aquatic frogs mostly hibernate underwater and spend most of the winter at the bottom of a pond, lake, or some other body of water. Toads and frogs are generally cold-blooded, which means the temperature of their body takes on the temperature of their surroundings. So, frogs can freeze during the winter because of a high concentration of sugar or glucose in their vital organs. Once they unfreeze, they continue as if nothing happened. Octopuses have 3 hearts and blue blood. They can move at speeds of 25 miles per hour, and they spray ink that not only blurs the predator's visual field, but actually harms them. Also, they have 9 brains, the central one and 8 smaller brains located in their arms. That's why their arms can open a shellfish while the central brain is busy doing something else. An octopus even tastes with its arms. They have cells in their suckers that enable the arms to touch and taste in a way that they detect chemicals marine creatures produce. That way, an octopus can distinguish prey from rocks. The button on the top of your baseball cap is there purely for aesthetic purposes. By the way, this little thing has a name. Professionals call it a squacho. Its initial function was to hold the 4 panels of the cap together. As hat making improved, the panels stopped needing it to hold together, and squacho was removed. But hats didn't look the same without it. Soon after, the squacho returned due to popular demand. Originally, high-heeled shoes weren't intended for galas and proms. Back in the 10th century, horse riding was pretty tough with flat-soled shoes, and many riders' feet would constantly fall out of the stirrups. Higher heels helped deal with that problem. The grip was much firmer with them, and they grew in popularity. It wasn't long before they became a fashion accessory to match stylish outfits. Notable people wouldn't want to be seen without them. Riding a horse with fancy heels was the equivalent of owning a luxurious sports car. Even though heels were worn mainly by men at the start, ladies picked up on the iconic trend in the 17th century. It's been one of the biggest ever since. In ancient Rome, salt was so precious that people even called it white gold. With scorching heat and no fridges, its purpose was to preserve food, mainly meat and fish. As a bonus, it made everything tastier. Sal, which is salt in Latin, was used instead of money to pay salaries. Here is where the word salary originated. Rice is the oldest cultivated food in human history. Its origins as wild grass started in a small valley around 15,000 years ago in Southeast Asia. Today, it's served globally as a staple diet and popular ingredient to 3.5 billion people. It would be difficult to imagine a world without video calls you use through your phone camera or laptop. The technology has helped game-changing innovations like working from home. Still, video calls' original purpose is far from how we use them today. The technology was introduced to confirm if the coffee was still in a pot. In 1993, researchers at the University of Cambridge found it frustrating when they took a break to get a cup of coffee, only to find that the pot was empty. So, they invented a device to monitor it and hooked up a camera that provided their computer with a live stream of the coffee pot. Thanks to these researchers, we can work in pajamas now. We know Albert Einstein for various achievements, but there's something he co-invented that goes overlooked. Together with his student, he invented a modified refrigerator. It's not like the ones we use today. In the 1920s, fridges weren't quite as safe as they produced poisonous gases. He wanted to create a safer version that didn't require electricity, without moving parts, and only needed a heat source to operate. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough funding, so the project dried up. Later, in the 1950s, electric fridges became popular. But in 2008, engineers from Oxford University revived this retro design. They're still working on it, but once they finish, the Einstein fridge will come in handy for rural areas without power and people who want to live off the grid. That random QWERTY design doesn't make things easier. In the 1870s, Christopher Sholes invented a layout that ensured typing was twice as fast. But with commonly used letters next to each other, it was a bit too fast, and the machines constantly jammed. So, he then developed the QWERTY design. It forced typists to adopt a pecking style. This way, they would search for a letter and slowly type with their index fingers. The keyboards remain unchanged even today, and people all over the world have somehow adapted to them. The plastic end of your shoelace is an aglet, and people have used it since ancient Rome. Sure thing, they had no plastic back then, so those aglets were made of stone, glass, or even metal. Extra wealthy people could accessorize their shoes with precious metals like brass or silver. What came first, the TV or the remote control? The technology that functions in the remote is older by several decades. In 1898, Nikola Tesla created a machine to control mechanical devices with radio waves. Initially, he tried selling the idea of a radio waves device operating I/O through remote-controlled boats, but the potential buyers were not interested. He was way ahead of his time, as remote controls were finally used with televisions in 1956. As engineer Percy Spencer initially invented something brilliant in 1945, he was working on a new vacuum tube, the magnetron, which was used with early radar systems. While working on the project, he found that the chocolate in his pocket had melted. Realizing the heating potential of the magnetron, he used it on corn kernels, which turned into popcorn. Then, he tried testing it with eggs, but things got a bit messy. So once the yolk was washed away, he built a metal box, keeping the energy within, and the first microwave oven was built. In 1733, a duke in England requested William Kent, an architect, to make a traveling device for his kids. William accepted and built the first ever stroller, but nobody had to push it. Instead of handles, it was built like a carriage and pulled by a goat or a small pony. Only a few were made as it was pricey. More than 100 years later, in 1848, the first stroller with push handles became available and more affordable. Police are often associated with donuts, and there is actually a reason why. During the 1950s in the USA, police officers that worked night shifts found it hard to locate anywhere open for a midnight snack. Donut shops at this time were family-owned. They were working hard throughout the night, providing fresh donuts for the coming day. The shops were vulnerable at night, becoming the perfect relationship: nourishment for the police and extra protection for the shops. Popping bubble wrap is an excellent source of relaxation, and it's also helpful with delicate packages. In 1957, two engineers glued together two shower curtains, trapping the air bubbles between. This is how the first bubble wrap was made. The result they were looking for was a sort of textured wallpaper. Still, it didn't go well on the market. Sometime later, they tried to sell it as insulation for greenhouses, and once again, they failed. Everything changed in 1960 when IBM needed to ship delicate computer parts. The bubble wrap was perfect, and they continued to collaborate. Using maps with your phone has become a far easier way to navigate, but the old-fashioned handheld maps were once the only option, creating a competitive industry. So much so that map makers would draw in phantom settlements to avoid rivals stealing from them. These fake towns were called a copyright trap. However, one of these fake settlements became real. Agloe in New York was drawn into a map by General Drafting Co. Another competing map maker had also included this town on their own, and the copyright trap was sprung. But in court, they found that in 1950, a general store had actually been built there. And the owner assumed that Agloe was a real area based on the map, so he named the shop after it. So there was no violation found, as technically Agloe was real, thanks to that general store. In 1943, Vesta Stout from Illinois was working with securing parcels. She was disappointed with the poor paper tape, as it would fall apart when wet. So she asked her boss to try to make waterproof tape. Her request was ignored, but she wrote a letter to President Roosevelt with an idea of how to make a better tape. Not only did she explain her concept, but she also provided it with detailed designs. He approved the idea and ordered the changes. The new tape was so helpful for freight transport that everyone wanted it, and they started selling it at hardware stores. In the 1950s, many people would wrap air ducts, and it was then deceptively named duct tape. Still, the adhesive on the sticky side wasn't suitable for cold and hot temperatures, which caused the tape to fall off. Despite this, people continued to use that tape for almost everything else. There are things about your body you know for sure, or don't you? Can you guess what exactly is a myth or fact? 1 point is for each correct answer. Let me know your score. Brown eggs are more nutritious than white eggs. Myth or fact? Myth. There is no study saying brown eggs are healthier than white eggs. The only difference is the color of the eggshell. The color of the eggshell doesn't affect its nutrition or quality. That is related to the type of chicken. Chickens with white earlobes tend to have white eggs. Have you heard that a large amount of the dust in your home is actually decanted skin? Not cool, I know. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? This is a myth. You're not just mopping your skin flakes from the floor. Many other components make the house dust. Fibers, hair, building materials, mold, pollen, insect body parts, and ash are some of them, according to the study made in Canadian houses. This makes sense because a house nearby a busy highway or in a renovation area has more dust than a house in the middle of a forest. Skin is our largest organ. Is this a fact or myth? It's a fact. You might think for a second that the intestine can be quite large when you unfold it, but nope. Skin wins the contest. An adult carries around 8 pounds and 22 square feet of skin. Can't think of us without a skin. It's not just there to cover our bodies, it has an essential role in protecting us too. You can't breathe and swallow at the same time. Myth or fact? It's a fact. Maybe you already knew the correct answer, but you tried it anyway after reading this, so see it for yourself. So in your throat, there are 2 passageways important for your survival. I'm putting aside the fancy medical names, and I'll refer to those 2 as airway and food pipe. They prevent breathing and swallowing simultaneously. Otherwise, food would enter the airway and cause severe complications. This doesn't always go as planned. That's why sometimes you end up coughing and preventing the piece of food from reaching the lungs. As well as having unique fingerprints, humans also have unique tongue prints. Is this a myth or fact? Fact! The human tongue is magnificent enough in its features that make us taste the food. It's also unique in its texture. People use biometric systems like fingerprints, voice scans, and iris scans for authentication. They are important to the identification and verification phases. Tongue print is unique, so it's very hard to copy it. It can be used as a biometric system tool too. What if people started using this system in their daily lives for safety reasons? Imagine locking a safe or your phone with a tongue print. An adult spends 3 hours in the bathroom every week. Do you think this is a fact or a myth? It's a fact. A poll by scientists reveals that an average adult spends 3 hours and 9 minutes on the toilet every week. This is more than the time they spent exercising. Take your sweet time, no need to rush. You swallow 8 spiders a year while sleeping. Myth or fact? Don't believe it. Lucky for us, and for the spiders of course, this is not true. Fear no more, and have a good night's sleep. Most spiders don't deliberately come near humans. Plus, vibrations coming from a sleeping person might be uncanny for them. Or maybe the spider just lives in the habitat. It thinks that you are flatmates sharing a room. As long as there is actual evidence, I call this a myth. Your thigh bone can resist thousands of pounds of force. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? Yes, this is a fact. People generally refer to it as tight bone, but its actual name is femur bone. This bone is located on the upper part of your leg. Experts say that this bone is hard to break. It's one of the 2 strongest bones in our anatomy. The first one is the temporal bone of the skull. If you wondered about the first one. Anyway, a tight bone can support 30 times more of your body weight. Maybe it's because the femur bone is the longest and largest bone in the human body. Do you believe that shaving your hair makes it grow back thicker? Fact or myth? Watch how I debunk that myth. Experts say shaving doesn't affect the thickness of the hair. The hair's head didn't remove, so the root is still there. You only shave the upper part. After a shave, the hair grows bluntly because it's been cut. That's why you may feel it's getting thicker. It's safe to eat food that's been on the floor for 5 seconds or less. Is this a fact or a myth? Sorry for blocking the best way you justify eating something that fell on the floor. There's no such thing as the 5-second rule. Researchers found that a substantial amount of bacteria transferred to the food within 5 seconds. The moisture of the food directly affects contamination. Imagine you drop a slice of watermelon and chips on the floor. I don't know why you're eating both together or how you end up dropping them both. But let's continue with this example anyway. The watermelon will have more contamination than chips. Because watermelon has more moisture in it, the surface of the watermelon is more open to transferring bacteria. Blondes and redheads may soon disappear. Myth or fact? An easy one, right? This is a myth. Red or blonde-colored hairs are connected to recessive genes. They can be carried from one generation to another without creating the hair color of the carrier. If both parents have the correct recessive genes, the chances are high that the next generation will have blonde or red hair. These genes are rare, but populations still have those genes carried out, so they won't get lost forever. For that to happen, literally everyone on the planet who carries that gene must disappear, so the chances are low. Drinking coffee dehydrates you. Is it a fact or myth? Myth! You can enjoy your morning coffee. Okay, you may visit the bathroom more frequently after drinking coffee, but it doesn't mean you're losing more water. There are numerous studies made about the effects of caffeine. Some of these studies revealed that drinking a reasonable amount of coffee a day doesn't increase the risk of dehydration. Eating yogurt helps your digestion. Do you think this is a fact or just another myth? A fact, but with the right choice of yogurt. Yogurt is food containing probiotics. They are the good bacteria that make everything flow smoothly in your gut. Eating yogurt alone may not be enough to have a healthy digestive system. It supports the digestive system positively. Keep in mind, though, not all yogurts are equal. Some of them have sugar in them, or they come with toppings like candy or cookies. Go for the classic ones. Your hair will grow faster if you have it cut more often. Fact or myth? We were always told not to cry too much over the hair we lost because it would grow back faster. Unfortunately, the hair growth rate doesn't depend on how often you get a haircut. The average hair growth rate is 0.01 inches per day. Plus, many factors affect it: age, hormones, and even the time of year. Knowing this new fact may make some people postpone their hairdresser appointments.
Apples you usually grab in the supermarket seem super fresh, but they can be up to a year old. It's all about how they're stored. First, they're covered with wax. Next, the wax is dried with hot air, and finally, the apples go into cold storage. Sloths are better at breath holding than dolphins. Those lazy buddies can slow their heart rate and hold their breath this way for up to 40 minutes. If they watched any breathtaking series, they'd literally breathe once per episode. If you look at any old photograph, you'll see that people didn't have those big smiles we love to have in the photos today. First, photographers preferred to keep things serious, so instead of cheese, people would say prunes to keep their lips tight, and other things. Earth is not the only planet with water. Scientists from NASA strongly believe one of Jupiter's moons, Europa, has an ocean with twice as much water as we have on our planet. It's hidden under a thick layer of ice. Even Mars has some liquid water flowing. Cicadas are some of the biggest flying insects you can find out there. Most species are not that impressive, only about 1 to 2 inches long. Only. But the largest one, known as the empress cicada, has a body length of about 3 inches. In comparison, its wingspan reaches a whopping 8 inches. That's a really big bug. Not all goats peacefully munch on meadow grass. Some of them prefer climbing trees for food. Meet Moroccan goats, a natural phenomenon unique to North Africa. The thing is, they're way more attracted to argan tree fruits than to regular grass. That's quite understandable. Those fruits look just like golden apples. These goats are quite agile, so they easily climb up the trees to get the juicy treats. And they rarely need help from their nanny. There's a creature that can technically live forever. You see, there's a species of jellyfish known as Turcephora dorluda, or however you pronounce their name on the screen. Well, those guys have a superpower of respawning. So whenever they get any sort of physical damage or something, those jellyfish reset themselves back to the polyp stage and start all over again. Now, let's test you. Are there more trees on Earth or stars in the Milky Way? If your answer is stars, sorry, you're wrong. According to scientists' estimations, there are up to 100 billion stars in our galaxy and about 3 trillion trees on Earth. Now, that's impressive. Pluto still hasn't made a complete orbit since it was discovered. And now imagine that it was found back in 1930. It takes about 248 years for Pluto to make a full orbit around the Sun. By the way, Mercury is the fastest. It takes only about 88 days for this planet to make a full trip. However, Pluto will complete its first full orbit since its discovery in 2178. I can't wait. One more fun fact about planets. The dwarf planet Haumea has a very peculiar shape. It looks exactly like a potato. It's about the same size as Pluto and has rings similar to those Saturn has. If you ever want to find it, it's located beyond the orbit of Neptune. Nachos aren't some ancient Mexican food. They were invented less than 100 years ago. Ignacio Aña, nicknamed Nacho, is said to have created this dish in the 1940s. There's a nice story behind nachos. A regular customer got really hungry and asked if Ignacio could bring her and her 3 friends something different that day. He saw how hungry the ladies were and decided to cook something quick for them. He had to improvise using available ingredients, so he put some tortillas, grated loads of cheese on top of them, and heated the dish from above. To make the dish more savory, he added some jalapeno peppers on top. Mamie Finan, that very regular customer, asked what the name of the unusual snack was. Ignacio didn't think long and said the name was Nacho Special. Oranges aren't necessarily orange. If grown in subtropical regions, the climate isn't cold enough to break down the chlorophyll, so the fruit peel stays yellow or greenish. Such oranges usually get treated with ethylene gas that can help turn the oranges orange. Aren't you impressed with that? Okay, it's time for a little riddle for you. What's common between peanut butter and an engagement ring? Both of them contain diamonds. Scientists have learned how to turn peanut butter into diamonds. They extracted the oxygen from CO2. They got the carbon and then put it under intense pressure, and in the end, they got diamonds. In a jiff, I suppose. Pufferfish, also known as blowfish, are famous for 2 things. It's clumsy and it can literally turn into a sort of a balloon. Blowing themselves up helps them survive in the wild. They are inedible when swollen. Well, they're not entirely inedible even when they're deflated. Their poison is over 1,000 times more toxic than cyanide. Don't count on antidotes, they just don't exist. Or probably we need more time to find one. Not only can people become knights, but penguins can do that too. There's one living in Edinburgh, and it was granted knighthood back in 2008. Meet Nils Olaf III, the mascot and colonel-in-chief of the Norwegian King's Guard. So, what size of shoes do you wear? I bet it's way smaller than the size the Statue of Liberty wears. No statue needs shoes, but if the Statue of Liberty wanted to grab a pair of new sneakers, she'd need to look for size 879. No surprise here, she's 151 feet tall. These are our muscles that can cause goosebumps. These tiny fan-shaped muscles are called erector pili, and we have them at the base of every hair follicle. Whenever it's cold, they get contracted, which makes our hairs literally stand up, creating goosebumps. You may think you're not an athlete, but if you've ironed your clothes in very uncomfortable locations at least once, you already are. Well, sort of. Extreme ironing is an extreme sport where people take ironing boards to very unexpected places, such as forests, canoes, or mountains, and iron the clothes there. Some do that even on the top of bronze statues or underwater. And yeah, there are even official championships. Haven't these people heard of permanent press? Rap battles aren't something that appeared recently. In medieval England, there was something called flyting, which was very much like contemporary rap battles. It was quite popular in the 15th and 16th centuries, when 2 opponents mocked each other in an improvised battle. Tongue map says we have different parts for different tastes. Well, not really. There are individual taste buds that sense certain flavors more than they do with some others, but it doesn't mean one area can taste sweet better than the other. Studies show that all mouth areas have taste buds sensitive to all tastes. Chameleons don't change colors because they want to match their surroundings. That would probably be a very tiring thing to do. In reality, some other things like mood, temperature, or the amount of light they get affect their color. When chameleons relax and stretch cells, crystals that are inside of them are affected by the light. These reptiles use crystals to communicate with each other. So, for example, darker shades show that they're not in such a good mood. It's more like they feel kind of grumpy. Beware the grumpy chameleon. Turkeys can blush just like people do. It works the same way. They blush when angry, excited, or even feel bad. You can see the skin on their necks and heads turn red. Opossums don't really sleep while hanging by their tails. You see that in cartoons and some photos, but in general, they don't. Their tails are strong, so these animals can grip branches and hold their weight, but only for shorter periods. Adults are really too heavy to stay in this position for too long, so they wouldn't get too much rest. So I could say, hanging by their tail overnight is sort of impossible.
Pockets are usually on the left side of shirts because most people are right-handed. Is this a myth or a fact? This is actually true. Many products favor the righties. Left-handed people will relate to this on so many levels. Let's say public transport. Have you ever noticed that the scanner at stations is typically on the right side? Household equipment and devices are one more example. Scissors, tweezers, bottle openers, and many other kitchen and household appliances are designed with right-handed people in mind. The same goes for shirt pockets. While some people use both hands equally and others change their hand preference between tasks, overall, most people are right-handed. A study has revealed that 75% to 90% of the world's population are right-handed and 10% are left-handed. This means it's more convenient for most people to have pockets on the left side than on the right side of their garments. Try it out for yourself. Your elbow kind of folds when you try to reach into the pocket on the right side. Whereas on the left side, your elbow makes an arc shape, which makes it easier to put things inside the pocket and take them out. Eating more protein leads to having bigger muscles. What do you think about this, bodybuilders? Myth or fact? This is a myth. It's true that eating protein is essential for building bigger muscles. Proteins are building blocks of your body, and yet, eating more than you need is unnecessary. Everyone should drink 8 glasses of water a day. Do you think this is a myth or a fact? This is a myth, so don't blame yourself for drinking less water than recommended. 8 glasses are not a magic number. Hydration needs differ from one person to another. How much water you should drink every day depends on your activity and exercise level. The temperature of the place where you live affects this number too. If you live in a hot area, you sweat more and need to drink more water. Soup, coffee, tea, fruits, and other things you eat daily also contain water. Carrots are high in sugar, so you should avoid eating them. If this is true, we should warn bunnies. Any guesses? Fact or myth? It's a myth. Carrots are about 85% water. 1 pound of cooked carrots only contains 3 teaspoons of sugar. Compared to the amount of sugar in desserts, this is nothing. Plus, carrots are high in phytochemicals, and eating them can help lower blood sugar. Medieval people believed in flat Earth. Is this a myth or a fact? Obviously, flat Earth is a myth. But so is the history built around this myth. You can't say that at those times. The whole world was skeptical about Earth's spherical shape. Even everyday visible things prove that. For example, medieval people could see that the twilight glow during sunrise and sunset formed an arc over the horizon. Vikings wore horned helmets. Is this a myth or fact? The well-known image of a Viking warrior is almost always completed with a horned helmet, but in reality, there were no horns. There's no evidence that Viking helmets were horned. Detox juices cleanse your body. Is this a fact or myth? It's a myth. Detoxification doesn't work that way. Your internal organs are responsible for the process of cleansing: the spleen, liver, kidneys, especially the liver. Your body is always in a natural state of cleansing itself. A person doesn't need to drink juices for detoxification. Nuts are junk food. Any thoughts? Myth or fact? You're right, this is a myth. Nuts are full of healthy fats. They're good for your heart and other organs. The average American throws away about 82 pounds of textile waste per year. Is this a fact or myth? Fact! Imagine all that waste. When someone throws their clothes away, they don't disappear into thin air. These items most likely reach landfills as their final destination. Donating clothes and selling them in second-hand stores are a much better option. Now, you've probably heard about life-saving laundry tricks that are said to make your clothes super clean and as good as they were on day 1. What if those laundry tips are actually myths? I got 3 of them lined up for you. Shirts should be buttoned when you put them in the laundry. Is it true or not? This is a myth. You'd better keep zippers closed to keep their teeth from catching the fabric of other clothes. But fastening the buttons of a shirt can expand the button net and the buttonhole. In the long term, buttons will start slipping out of place. Washing clothes in hot water is the most effective way to clean them. Is this a myth or fact? That's another laundry myth. You want to rid your clothes of germs, yet hot water alone won't be enough for this. Nowadays, many detergents can clean clothes in cold or warm water. You should remove stains from the face of the fabric. Is it true? Most people apply water and soap to the stain, starting from the front side of the fabric, but that's not the best option. A much better way is to start from the back. The stain can go deeper if you treat it from the front. Try to make the stain move up to the surface rather than push it inside. Listening to music is an effective tool for learning languages. Is it a myth or fact? It's a fact. Scientists say listening to a song and humming along can help you learn a language. Most people struggle to learn grammar, yet in our daily lives, we don't always follow grammar rules. Songs can help you pick up informal expressions. Scientists have also concluded that music can help you remember new words and add them to your vocabulary. Let me give you an example. It's from your first year at school. Yep, the alphabet song. Are you a morning person or a night owl? Either way, you might want to know these facts and myths about sleep. The longest someone went without sleep was 11 days. Do you think this is possible, or is it an urban legend? This is a fact. Randy Gardner set the record for the longest amount of time a person went without sleep. It was an experiment carried out by Stanford sleep researcher Dr. William C. Dement. The doctor recorded and monitored Randy Gardner's sleep activity. Gardner managed to stay awake for 11 days and 25 minutes. Your body eventually gets used to getting less sleep. Myth or fact? It's a myth. There are many studies proving that your body and especially your brain can't get used to sleeping less. Have you noticed that after a few nights of insufficient sleep, you begin to feel groggier during the day? That's your body trying to adjust to not getting enough rest. Long-term sleep deprivation affects your daytime performance, focus, and decision-making. Many grown-ups need 5 or fewer hours of sleep. Can it be true? Well, this one's easy. It's a myth. Experts from the National Sleep Foundation recommend that the average adult sleeps 7 to 9 hours per night. Some people have a genetic mutation thanks to which they wake up refreshed after a short night's sleep, but such people are an exception. 1 in 4 million. The ability to fall asleep in any place and at any time means you're a good sleeper. What do you think? Myth or fact? It's a myth. A good sleeper gets a proper amount of sleep and has a regular sleep schedule. Cats spend 2/3 of their life asleep. Do you believe that? This will probably come as no surprise. It's a fact. How many of the facts and myths did you guess correctly?
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.